Side 3, Objective Bajor, by John Peel. Continuing on page 82. "Get me Morel," Cisco snapped at Kira. Then to Dax he added, "Move us closer to the Morven Falls. We have to stop them." Finally he whirled around to O'Brien. "Chief, get to the transporter room. Lock onto any life forms aboard that ship and beam them over as fast as possible." O'Brien acknowledged and ran for the turbolift. This was all he needed right now. Cisco was finding it more and more difficult to keep his temper under control. The universe seemed to be filled with nothing but lunatics at the moment. "On screen," Kira called. Cisco glared up as Morel's image faded in. The warrior looked aged and tired, which wasn't surprising. "Morel," he snapped, "break off this suicide run. I'm having your crew beamed off now." "No, Captain," Morel answered, with some hint of steel still in his voice. "This is my last chance to pay those murderers back for what they've done. Don't try and stop me." "I have no option," Cisco thundered. "If you attack the intruder, they'll annihilate whatever survivors there are from this massacre. Stand down now." "No, Captain," Morel repeated. "I'm sure that the survivors would agree with me. We have to strike back." "Don't be a fool," Cisco exclaimed. "There's nothing to be gained by this attack. Right now, the important thing is to look after the living, not avenge the dead. That can come later." Morel shook his head. "There is no later," he said simply. "There is only now. Goodbye." He cut the transmission, and the screen returned to stars. "Damn that man," Cisco muttered. "Major, what's he doing?" "Still on a collision course with the intruder," she reported. There was both pain and pride in her voice. "He's not going out without a fight." "That's what he thinks," Cisco said. Tapping his communicator, he called, "Chief, how's it going?" "I'm trying to lock on, Captain," O'Brien's voice said from the air. "With that power overload, it's going to be difficult. I can only chance taking out half a dozen or so at a time." "Then do it as soon as you can," Cisco ordered. He turned to Odo. "Any idea how long we have?" The security officer scowled. "About 4 minutes, I'd say." His face twitched. "Those engines are really straining now." Cisco nodded. To Dax he called, "How close are we?" 3,000 kilometers. Her hands were steady on the helm. "Closing slowly. They've built up their own velocity quite well." Kira spoke up. "When the ship explodes, will our shields be able to take it at this range?" "We'll have to find out," Cisco replied. "Dax, use the tractor beam on maximum. Slow down the Morven Falls." "Acknowledged." The Trill's fingers flew across her board even faster. Cisco leaned over her shoulder and adjusted the main viewer. The intruder vessel filled the whole screen. They were approaching it in pursuit of the Morven Falls. It had seemed impressive at a distance, but as they drew closer it was breathtaking. The entire outer shell seemed to be smooth and polished. The lights of the stars reflected from the burnished metal, if it was exactly metal, creating a tinged reflection, with the light spinning off in rainbow hues. As O'Brien had commented, these aliens had an incredible technology. It was appalling that they couldn't apply it constructively. "Got her," Dax announced. "But it may not hold. Tractor strength is only 87%. Cisco could see the tiny form of the Morven Falls on the screen now. The vague glow of the tractor field that had enfolded it showed up, thanks to the computer enhancement. The tractor lock had to hold. "Transport commencing," Odo announced from his station. Then he shook his head. "The Chief doesn't have much time." "Tractor lock is weakening," Dax announced, striving furiously to establish a stronger link. "Those circuits still aren't back to normal, and they're starting to break down." "Hold on," Cisco encouraged her, and the Defiant. "Hold on, just another minute." The picture on the screen abruptly reverted to that of Morel, who was desperate and furious. "Cisco, let us go!" "I'm sorry, I can't do that," Cisco replied. "Prepare to be beamed over." He cut the transmission by hand. "They're overrunning their engines harder," Odo announced. "It can't—" His words were cut off as the screen exploded to white light, and then the dampening field closed down the incoming view. Dax slapped her hand down on her controls, cutting off the tractor beam. The shock wave of the explosion, transmitted down the tractor carrier wave, slammed into the Defiant. Buffeted like an ancient sailing ship in a storm, the ship whirled, the inertial dampers striving to absorb and redirect the load. Cisco was sent stumbling against his own command chair, and he grabbed hold of it. The other bridge crew had all been seated and managed to stay that way by grabbing any available handholds. Then the blow faded, and the ship reverted to normal. "Report," Cisco barked. "Shields are holding," Odo announced, "though we've lost several minor systems. The chief isn't going to be happy." "Helm is responding to power again," Dax added. "O'Brien," demanded Cisco, slapping his communicator, "how many did you get off?" 18, Captain," came the chief's voice. "It was all I had time for." "Well done," Cisco told him. That meant another 40 must have died in that futile gesture. War is hell indeed. "Prepare to continue searching for survivors," he ordered. As the crew moved to obey, Dax glanced up. "There's an incoming message from Hive Master Dron," she said, surprised. "On screen," Cisco ordered. He straightened in his seat. "What is it now?" Dron's face looked slightly puzzled, if Cisco was reading him correctly. "Captain Cisco, I owe you our thanks. We saw what you just did. You probably saved the lives of thousands of my people." "I didn't do it for you," Cisco replied. "I did it to prevent you from taking revenge on the survivors from your massacre." "Why ever you did it," Dron answered, unperturbed, "you have our thanks. I am quite surprised by your actions." His nose twitched. "You do not live on a planet, do you?" "No," Cisco answered. "We are from Deep Space 9. It's a station in orbit about Bajor." He wondered if it was wise to give that information, but could see nothing to be gained by keeping the truth secret. "Ah!" Dron seemed happy with the news. "I had suspected that you were an intelligent person." Cisco wondered what that was supposed to mean. "I'm also a very angry one," he replied as calmly as he could. "Right now, my priority is to help the survivors back to Bajor. Once that is done," he leaned forward in his seat, "I promise you I'll be back." The Hive Master nodded slightly. "Yes, we may have a great deal to discuss. I look forward to seeing you again, Captain." The picture broke up. "I look forward to feeling my hands around his scrawny neck," Kira muttered. "Can you believe the nerve of him, making it sound like a social call?" Cisco spun to face her. "Well, he'll be disabused of that notion very quickly," he promised. "Whatever Dron thinks, I aim to see that he pays very dearly for what he and his people have done to Durain." Chapter 11. Gul Dukat turned away from his screens, thinking furiously. The science team on the Keratan had decided that these unknown aliens were using some kind of monofilament weapon, which had interested him greatly. The level of the invaders' technology was quite formidable. There had to be some way to obtain it for Cardassia. Dukat had been completely unprepared to witness the destruction of Durain, however. Seeing the alien ship enclose and then demolish the world had been quite unsettling. Nothing was now left of the planet but a smoking, blackened core. That was a weapon the Cardassians needed to obtain. However, there was more than the seed of uncertainty in Dukat's mind. Could even they defeat a foe as powerful as this? He was certain that the aliens would never give over their technology willingly. It was bound to come down to a match of force. but Ducat could not be certain that the Cardassians would prevail in such a match. And, if attempted and lost, such a war would presumably end with Cardassia itself in the place of Durain 4. The stakes were very high indeed, but the prize might be worth taking that risk. The Karatan had intercepted the conversation between Sisko and the Hive Master. Ducat had not been too surprised by Sisko's actions. He tended to be quite predictable, for the most part. And when he wasn't predictable, he was quite a formidable ally, or foe. Sisko had bought time to evacuate the refugees, and then aimed to return. Was he, too, after the alien technology? The Federation preferred to barter for such things, so perhaps Sisko was returning to contact his superiors and arrange for negotiations. It would be completely unacceptable for the Federation to possess this alien technology, and for the Cardassians to be denied it, of course. That would affect the balance of power here far too much. Ducat rose to his feet and glanced around the monitoring room. No one was paying any attention to him, which was as it should be. "Rahl," he barked, "take over monitor control. If any further communications from the Karatan come through, acknowledge only, and then contact me immediately. I shall be in conference with the other gulls. For the Karatan, and that alone, you are authorized to disturb me." "Understood," Rahl replied, saluting. He marched across and took over Ducat's station. Ducat nodded curtly and then walked thoughtfully from the room. The next decision could not be his alone, but it would have to be made swiftly. The Federation could not be allowed to be the sole recipient of this alien technology. Better yet, the Federation should not possess it at all. It belonged in Cardassian hands. Deep Space Nine was a shambles. The Defiant had escorted most of the refugee ships that had fled the destruction of Durain back to the station. Many of them barely made the journey, and Sisko had been forced to evacuate 18 of the smaller, older vessels during the flight. The Defiant had been crowded when it had docked. Now the several hundred smaller refugee vessels swarmed about the station, awaiting their turn at the docking ports. Sisko had contacted Lieutenant Soika on his way back, and he had managed to organize dozens of spare rooms. Others that had been unoccupied since the Cardassian departure 3 years before were being opened and prepped for temporary use. Everywhere one looked on the station there was feverish activity. Many of the refugees had nothing but the clothes they wore. Even so, they were the lucky ones. Hundreds were in need of medical help, and Bashir had fled to the infirmary as soon as he could. He and his teams were working like dervishes, trying to get at least the most serious cases stabilized. Even so, there were hundreds waiting, with temporary bandages covering scar tissue, gashes, and sometimes even the stumps of lost limbs. Those survivors who were at least mobile tried to find rooms and stay out of the way, but it wasn't easy. They were tired, scared, sick, and angry. There was no way that they could forget what had happened to them, even for a moment. Shuttles were also arriving from Bajor with whatever medical staff and supplies Shakar had managed to obtain. It wasn't much, but it was a help, and it added to the congestion. As Sisko made his way to Ops, the cries, the despair, and the tears of the refugees gathered around him like a cloud. He couldn't afford to let his anger and sympathy affect his judgment, and he tried his hardest to steel his heart against reacting. It wasn't easy. Reaching Ops at least gave Sisko a little quiet. Only the essential staff were here, and the noise seemed muted compared with the rest of the station. Kira and Dax were already at their posts. O'Brien, of course, was nowhere to be seen. He was either helping to prep more rooms for the refugees, or else already back at work on the Defiant. Lieutenant Soika nodded to Sisko, and then took a science station out of the way. "Contact Starfleet," Sisko ordered him. "I want to speak with Admiral Noguchi immediately." He turned to Kira. "I think you'd better speak to Minister Shakar," he said gently. "Tell him everything that's happened." "And then what?" Kira asked pointedly. "He's bound to want to know what we're going to do." She didn't have to add what Sisko could read in her eyes. "And so do I." "Tell him that we're going back as soon as the refugees are unloaded from the Defiant. We're going to talk with Hive Master Dron." "Just talk?" demanded Kira. "What would you have me do?" Sisko asked mildly. The tone should have warned her off, but it didn't. She glared at him. "Wipe them out," she said bluntly. "With what?" Sisko asked. "Even if the Chief gets the Defiant's weapons systems back online, I very much doubt we could take out that starship of theirs, and I'm not at all sure that we should, even if we could." Kira gave him a filthy look. "They massacred Durain." "I don't need to be reminded of that," Sisko answered. "But who is they? Is it every inhabitant of the Hive? That ship is enormous. It must contain a population of millions, if not billions. Are they all guilty? Or was the attack planned and executed only by the elite? Until I know for a fact which it was, I am not going to sanction genocide." Conflicting emotions warred across Kira's face. Finally, though, she managed to neutralize her expression and give a very tight nod. "I'm sorry, Captain," she said through gritted teeth. "You're right, of course. Genocide is not the answer." "Thank you." Sisko managed a weak smile. "But I'm sure you expressed an opinion a lot of people must hold by now. Probably one that Shakar will have. Do your best to see that he understands mine. Please." "Of course." Kira turned, and Sisko could see the tension in every muscle of her lithe body. It wasn't easy for her to control the urge to strike back. It wasn't a lot easier for him to restrain the same urge. "I have Admiral Noguchi for you, sir," Soika called out. "I'll take it in my office," Sisko replied. He felt almost as though he were fleeing ops and accusing eyes as he headed for his room. As the doors hissed shut, he hurried to his desk and tapped in the accept call code. The ancient, wrinkled face stared back at him. "Admiral." "Captain," Noguchi replied, inclining his head slightly. "You have something to report?" "Yes." Sisko sighed. "I have to report the destruction of Durain 4 and the deaths of a great number of its inhabitants. I'll be transmitting complete recordings, Admiral, but thought you should hear this immediately." He gave a brief report of all that had happened. "I'm getting ready to return to the Hive," he finished. "Hive Master Dron has agreed to a meeting." Noguchi's face seemed to have grown even more lines while Sisko had been talking. "And what do you aim to do, Captain?" he inquired. "Discover who is responsible for this massacre," he answered. "How long will it be before I can expect backup?" Scowling slightly, the Admiral answered, 7 days. "A week?" Sisko tried not to make it sound like a reprimand. "Isn't that a long time?" Noguchi nodded. "As you know, we don't like to keep too many large vessels in your sector, Captain. It makes the Cardassians rather nervous. Normally, the Enterprise would have been much closer, but—" He spread his hands. Sisko knew all about the recent destruction of the Enterprise D, of course. "The next closest vessels are the Farragut and the Pike. I've had both rerouted to you. The Farragut will arrive in 7 days, and the Pike in 9. That's the best I can do, Benjamin." That wasn't what Sisko had been hoping to hear. Knowledge that there was a starship close behind the Defiant would have boosted morale, especially his. "And how about our allies, sir?" he asked carefully. "Any chance of help there?" "The Klingons are being rather difficult at the moment," Noguchi answered politely. "They will not be able to spare aid. The Cardassians, of course, have 3 fleets in your vicinity, but they also claim they can spare no ships." "Marvelous," muttered Sisko. "So it's entirely up to me, then?" "I have tremendous faith in you, Benjamin," Noguchi answered. "How are repairs to the Defiant progressing?" "At last word, we had no weapons up and running," Sisko informed him. "I imagine that will be rectified as soon as possible, but it does mean that at the moment my most powerful weapon is diplomacy. I'd have preferred something considerably stronger." Noguchi nodded. "Yet you have always been very capable at talking. I am sure you will do everything possible in these less than encouraging circumstances." "I don't have a lot of options, do I?" asked Sisko. "No," agreed Noguchi. "And for that I am truly sorry. You are in a very difficult position." "Then I'll simply have to work harder to extricate myself." With a sigh, Sisko signed off. Not good news. Not good at all. 7 days. Who knew what the invader would be up to in 7 days? He clambered to his feet, wishing he had time for a shower and some rest. Right now, they were luxuries he simply couldn't afford. He returned to Ops and caught Major Kira's eye. She didn't look at all happy. "What's wrong now?" he asked gently. "Shakar is less than overjoyed with my report," Kira informed him. "He is also less than happy with what we've done so far. He seems to share the majority opinion on Bajor." Sisko sighed. "Which is that we should annihilate the invaders," he guessed. "Something like that." "Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to disappoint him, and the rest of your planet. At the moment, I doubt we could eliminate a fly using the Defiant's weapons." He tapped his communicator. "Sisko to O'Brien. Give me some good news, Chief. I really need it." There was a slight cough and a muttered oath, and then O'Brien's testy reply, "Weapons are up, Captain. We've got about 40% capacity right now." "Thank you, Chief," Sisko said sincerely. "That's the best news I've had all day." "And," O'Brien added, "the refugees are almost all evacuated. I've just got a systems check to run, and we can launch again in, 15 minutes, I'd estimate. Fontana and I can work on the weapons systems in flight." "Chief, you're a marvel." Sisko nodded to Kira. "Major, Dax, get Odo again and meet me on the Defiant." He managed a tight smile. "We're going to practice our diplomacy." "I'm not so sure about that," Harl said, staring at the comp. "It seems potentially dangerous to me." "Well, of course there will be some risk," Took agreed, scowling. "But this is rebellion, right? We aim to show the Hive Masters what we think of their plans. We have to take some chances." "I know that," Harl replied, trying not to let his anger get the better of him. Took was on his side, after all. "But sabotaging the drones seems to me to be an indiscriminate method of striking at them. Someone might get injured." "Afraid?" asked Took sneeringly. "You're not truly committed to change, are you?" "No one can say that about me," Harl said. He felt like slamming his companion's head against the nearest metal wall. "But I want to be certain that when I strike, it will harm only the Hive Masters. We are not at war with our fellows." "I know that, of course," agreed Took, obviously attempting to placate him. "But we have to get attention. Sabotaging the drones in this sector while they are hard at work will draw a lot of notice." Harl considered it. While the drones were replicating feverishly, it wouldn't be too difficult to cause a glitch in their programming. But there were an awful lot of workers around, and too many chances that one or more might be injured if something unexpected occurred. "No," he decided finally. "It's a good idea, but too risky. We'll have to find some other way of striking." He handed the comp back to Took. "This is not the way." Scowling, Tuke accepted the comp ungraciously. "I think you're wrong," he complained. "But have it your way." "Good." Harl moved off to his next workstation, ignoring his companion in rebellion. Which was decidedly a mistake. As soon as Harl disappeared from view, a wide smile crossed Tuke's snout. "It doesn't matter what you wish," he said softly. "The sabotage will take place." He glanced down at the comp he held carefully. It had Harl's palm prints all over it, and he had been the one to use the keys to access the details of the sabotage. Once Tuke set the destruction in motion, it would be Harl who would be blamed for the resulting explosion. And Tuke was quite certain that there would be casualties. He'd already selected 3 victims who would be in the processing area when the drones exploded. With 3 victims and such a visible act of sabotage, Harl was bound to be arrested, tried, and convicted, just as Security Master Raldar had ordered. Pleased with his planning, Tuke set off to finish his task. Chapter 12. Gul Dukat stood stiffly at attention in the quarters of Gultar Kiev. The suite of rooms was very Spartan, even by Cardassian standards. This would not have been so remarkable had Kiev not been the effective ruler of the Cardassian Empire. Not technically, of course. Theoretically, Cardassia Prime was ruled by a citizens' council that was elected into power. Practically speaking, the council was no more than a figurehead for Kiev and the military. They held the power, and power was everything. Despite this, Dukat was impressed that Kiev eschewed almost all the trappings of power. His suite of rooms was larger than most, naturally, but he had more support staff in attendance. There were few furnishings beyond the utilitarian desks, monitors, and seats. There were no artworks of the sort that many of the lesser military loved to show off in their own quarters. Even the food for Kiev's table came from a standard-issue replicator. Kiev had always claimed that his position was one of responsibility and not privilege. Dukat sometimes believed that. More often, he believed that Kiev believed it. "At ease," Kiev finally barked, looking up from the report he had rather too ostentatiously been studying. It was the oldest "I'm in charge and you're not" trick in the book. Even the humans used it. "I've studied your reports and recommendations, Dukat. Incisive, interesting, and egotistical as ever." "Thank you, sir." Dukat inclined his head slightly. There were questions he was dying to discover the answers to, but there was no way he was going to ask them. It was up to Kiev to announce his plans, or keep them bottled up, as he often did. "Your recommendations are provocative," Kiev added, standing up. He was a thick-set elderly figure, slightly shorter than Dukat, and he walked with a pronounced limp, the result of an old war wound, or at least so he claimed. Dukat said nothing, knowing this was merely a conversational gambit. Kiev was trying to get him worried and nervous. With others, these tactics often worked, but Dukat had served under the Gultar for too long. He knew all of his affectations and mannerisms. Kiev, knowing that Dukat knew this, tapped the computer screen. "You propose taking the home fleet to the Durain system and investigating this alien vessel further?" "Yes, sir," agreed Dukat. Now was the time to explain his reasoning. "The First Fleet is needed to protect our borders from Dominion infiltration. The Third Fleet is several days distant. The Second Fleet is monitoring events on the Klingon frontier. Only the Home Fleet could reach Durain in time to contact the aliens." "True," agreed Kiev. "If that were our priority." He glowered at Dukat. "The Home Fleet is needed precisely where it is, at home. Your request is denied." Dukat scowled back. "Then we are to do nothing about this potential threat?" he asked, feigning surprise. "That is a little puzzling, sir." "I didn't say we're doing nothing." Kiev hobbled out from behind his desk. I've contacted Gul Gavron and ordered him to investigate. But, sir, protested Ducat, the Third Fleet is several days away. I know, agreed Kiev. It's a pity, but there's nothing else to do. And I know that Gavron doesn't have your, shall we say, devious mind, Ducat, but there's no help for that. Sir, Ducat pointed out cautiously, I was the one who made the discovery of this alien hive. I monitored and reported on it. By rights, this assignment should be mine. Kiev waved a hand dismissively. By rights, he echoed. You have no rights that I don't allow you, Ducat, and never forget that. No, sir, Ducat agreed, casting his eyes down to the floor. I apologize if I have disappointed you. You haven't disappointed me, Kiev answered, a slight smile on his face. On the contrary, you've rarely pleased me more. Given the information that you have, your report and recommendations are perfect. If things were not as they are, I'd have given you permission to go hunting. I'm glad to see that you're so keen on getting the alien knowledge to help the military. Ducat looked confused. I'm sorry, Gultar, he said. Did I omit something from my analysis, then? Nothing you could have known about. Kiev appeared to consider for a moment. Then he said, Come here. He led the way to his one affectation, the wall-sized window looking out over the capital. The view of the city from here was breathtaking, looking down on the myriad buildings and complexes below the citadel. Ducat could see why Kiev had this window. It breathed power. Far, far below, tiny forms scurried about their business. Up here was where the heart of the Empire lay. It looks peaceful, doesn't it? Kiev asked him a moment later. Very, agreed Ducat. In a productive sort of way, of course. Of course, Kiev said dryly. But that is merely the surface. Scratch that view, and you will find any number of malcontents and troublemakers. Ducat frowned. There have always been those who dislike the power that the military have, sir, he objected. But they are a minority. They are hardly worth you being concerned about them. They can't get along with one another and have no organization at all. Until recently, Kiev told him. Now the resistance to the military is growing daily. Unrest is spreading. He grimaced. 3 days ago, a shipment of arms was intercepted and stolen on its way to the Bavroma spaceport. Ducat looked shocked. I hadn't heard about that, he replied. Of course you hadn't, Kiev responded. That's not the kind of news I allow to get out. He scowled out at the city below. Sooner or later there will be an insurrection. My sources indicate that it will be sooner. That's why the home fleet stays here. He laid an arm on Ducat's shoulder. And why you do, too. I need good officers close to me, officers I can trust. Let Gavron go after this alien vessel and seek glory. You will remain here with me, and we shall begin to hunt for traitors. You will be my right hand, Ducat. Isn't that more important than the mission you desired? Much more, Ducat thought. He'd known all along about the arms theft and had planned his recommendations very carefully. Kiev had done precisely what Ducat had hoped he would, removed the Third Fleet from consideration and strengthened Ducat's own grip on power. By seeming eager for this mission, Ducat had made certain he wouldn't go on it. Let Gavron get the glory, if he could. Ducat rather suspected that these aliens had a few more tricks to play yet. It would be much better if Gavron was the one to fall in battle against them. Then Ducat could leap in to save the day. Ducat gave a smart salute. It is my duty to serve where I am most needed, Gultar, he said. And it is also my pleasure. Good, Kiev said, waving a dismissal. I knew you'd see the sense of it. "Indeed I do," thought Ducat as he bowed and made his way from Kiev's quarters. "Indeed I do." This time out, the Defiant felt right. Sisko sat back in the command chair, feeling more at ease. O'Brien, Fontana, and the other engineers had worked miracles on the ship's systems. Sisko's own tallies on his seat arms showed that shields were back to 95%, that engineering was on full, and that life support was functioning perfectly. Only the weapons systems remained in need of drastic work, which was where the chief and the lieutenant were right now, and weapons were already up to 60%. Sisko felt a whole lot better returning to the hive with at least a few teeth he could bear, should it prove necessary. Diplomacy first, of course. Sisko hadn't needed Admiral Noguchi's orders to know that. But if diplomacy failed, it didn't hurt to carry a big stick and be prepared to use it. He still didn't know what to make of these aliens. They seemed to vacillate between making sense and making war. They claimed that the Duranians had been insane, but what did they mean by that word? Still, Hive Master Drawn had agreed to talk, and perhaps that would lead to a better understanding of what the Hive was after. His first directive as a Starfleet officer was to seek out new life, although this one seemed to have sought them out. It was important to understand the members of this species before he made judgments about them. Still, it was hard not to judge them yet, given the countless lives they had taken. But at that moment, Sisko had far too little information to build on. "Incoming message, Benjamin," Dax said softly, obviously bothered about interrupting his train of thought. "It's from Shakar." "Thanks, old man." Sisko managed a wan smile. "I'll take it in the ready room." He had been expecting this call for a while now, and still wasn't certain what he'd say. When he was alone, he activated his screen. "First Minister," he said politely, "what can I do for you?" Shakar was no fool. He had been Kira's leader in the Resistance, and Kira had the highest regard for him. Sisko, in turn, valued Kira's opinions and was certain that Shakar probably lived up to everything that the Major claimed of him. The First Minister raised an eyebrow. "Well, Captain, I assume that asking you to wipe out these murderers isn't likely to get me anywhere, is it?" "No, it isn't," agreed Sisko calmly, "though I do understand the request." "I thought you might." Shakar rubbed the back of his neck, looking suddenly very tired. "And I'm equally sure you understand that I'm being pressured constantly to make certain the Federation destroys the Hive." "Kai Wynn," guessed Sisko. Shakar managed a mirthless laugh. "That was too easy, Captain. Yes, of course she's demanding it. Loudly, frequently, and publicly. Anything to embarrass me, naturally." "I'm not totally surprised," admitted Sisko. "You have my sincere sympathies." "Well," Shakar finally asked, "what do you plan on doing?" "Talking to them," Sisko informed him. "Discovering what they want here, what their plans are, and who is responsible for what they did to Durain." "And then?" Shakar leaned forward eagerly. "I'm not sure," admitted Sisko. "But I will promise you this. Whoever is behind the destruction of Durain will pay for it. You have my word." There was a slight pause, and then Shakar nodded. "That's good enough for me." He managed a real smile. "Nerys holds you in very high regard, Captain, and I hold her in high regard. I am happier with your assurance." "Thank you." Sisko inclined his head slightly. "I will do my best to live up to my reputation." "Understood." Shakar nodded slightly and then cut contact. Leaning back in his seat, Sisko stared up at the ceiling for a few moments. At least Shakar wasn't pressuring him too much. That was about the only positive aspect of this entire mission. He knew that Shakar must be under tremendous pressure back on Bajor, but he had the wisdom not to try and pass that along. He was definitely shaping up to be a very good First Minister, unlike the previous ones Sisko had been forced to deal with. As long as the backstabbing so common in Bajoran politics didn't get to Shakar, he'd probably be the best thing to happen to the planet since the Cardassian withdrawal. Meanwhile, Sisko still had to do something about the hive. Right on cue with this thought, his communicator beeped. "Sorry to disturb you, Captain," said Dax's voice, "but we're about to enter the Durain system." "On my way." Sisko collected his thoughts and returned to the bridge. Taking his seat, he said, "Put Durain 4 on visual as soon as you can, Dax." He wanted to see what had happened to the planet in the few hours since they had last left it. "Aye, sir," Dax acknowledged, concentrating on her instruments. While he could do little but wait, Sisko tapped his communication badge. Sisko to O'Brien. "Chief, how's it going?" There was a brief pause, and then O'Brien's reply. "All phasers are now online, Captain. I'd appreciate the chance to run another diagnostic before they're used, but if you need them, I'm pretty sure they'll be fine. Photon torpedoes will take us about another half hour or so." "Thank you, Chief," Sisko said gratefully. "That's excellent news. I won't bother you until you're finished. Sisko out." Phasers back online. Sisko hoped he wouldn't be needing them, and that this whole mess could somehow be resolved peacefully. But he couldn't envisage Hive Master Dran agreeing to punish himself and the other guilty parties for the destruction of Durain. Sooner or later, he felt that this would end up as a shooting war. The best Sisko could manage would be to make it later. "Durain on screen," Dax announced. Sisko and the bridge crew had been prepared to see the smoldering ruins of the planet. It still hung there in space, gases venting from the charred core. The alien ship had changed, however. It still hung above the planet, but the enveloping wings had once more straightened out. That wasn't what surprised Sisko. It was the activity down the center of the hive's axis. There was a definite gap of some kind, with space showing through in several points. They were still too far away to make out any details beyond that, but every instinct in Sisko's body told him that whatever was going on spelled trouble in the worst way. "Dax," he said urgently, "what's happening? Is the hive breaking up?" She didn't reply for a moment, instead turning all the sensors on the craft. Behind him, Sisko could hear Odo tapping frantic commands into his own panels. Finally, Dax sighed. "I don't know what's going on," she announced. "We're still not close enough for a good scan, but I'd say that whatever is happening there is no accident." "What do you mean?" asked Sisko, moving to stand directly behind her. "That line is much too straight and regular to be accidental," she pointed out. "If there were a problem, it would look more chaotic." "Maybe," agreed Sisko. "Keep scanning. Let me know the second you discover anything." He turned to Kira. "Try and contact the Hive Master," he said. "Let him know we're coming and that we expect to be allowed on board to talk." Then he turned to Odo, who was scowling over his own equipment. "Anything, Constable?" The changeling glanced up. Though he had never quite mastered the art of duplicating a human face precisely, he had definitely got the hang of looking worried. "It's difficult to say," he answered. "I've been scanning the rest of the system, on a hunch. There's a Cardassian science ship hanging about at the extreme limits of sensor contact." Sisko snorted. "I might have guessed that they're monitoring the whole business." "And doing nothing to help," agreed Odo. "I'd expect no more of them. But this means that they probably witnessed the battle, and the alien capabilities." He didn't have to finish that thought. Sisko nodded. "So we can probably expect a Cardassian delegation to try and join these talks soon." "That's what I'd predict." Odo scowled. "It won't make your job any easier." "I'd be happy if it simply doesn't make it harder," Sisko admitted. "Captain," called Dax, "I'm getting some very odd readings from the hive." As Sisko hurried to join her, she explained, "I'm getting a preliminary sensor scan from the ship now. There are thousands of small mechanisms on the skin of the hive, and probably even more inside the vessel. Repairing the break? Sisko hazarded. No, creating it. Dax looked up, her strong face shrouded in puzzlement. They're splitting the hive in two. Chapter 13. None of this was making sense of any kind to Sisko. Why would the hive apparently be destroying itself? There had to be something here that they were all missing. Tapping his communicator, Sisko called, "Sisko to O'Brien. Chief, you want to take a look at what's happening with the hive right now?" "I'm on my way to the bridge anyway," came O'Brien's response. "Be with you in a minute or so." Sisko stared at the screen. They were still too far away to make out details on the hive, but in his mind he could see the mechanisms running over the ship. Why were they trying to break the hive in half? Had something gone wrong? Or was this somehow planned? "I've spoken to the hive master," Kira announced. "He's given me a set of beam-down coordinates." "Did he sound at all worried?" asked Sisko. "No, more bored and put upon, if you ask me." So whatever was happening to the hive wasn't a mistake. He'd never have sounded so calm if his world was breaking apart. Sisko nodded. "I'll be taking just a small team, Major," he said softly. "Would you be very offended if I left you here in command?" Kira's eyes sparkled. "It's probably the best idea, Captain," she answered sincerely. "I'm not sure I could restrain myself from killing somebody down there." Sisko managed a small smile. "I may have similar trouble," he confessed. "Dax, you'll be with me. Odo, you too." Odo inclined his head slightly. "Why me? Not that I mind accompanying you, but surely the chief would be more logical." "To check out the technology?" Sisko guessed. "Maybe. But this is, in effect, a police action. I think you'd be of much more use in that. Plus, you have quite an uncanny knack for seeing through lies and bravado." "It comes from associating with Quark too much," Odo complained. "I'll be happy to help out." The turbolift doors hissed open, and O'Brien emerged. "Good grief," he muttered, witnessing what was happening on the screen. He hurried to the science station and began his scans. The Defiant was closing fast on the hive now. The ship was growing slowly on the forward screen, and some details finally started to emerge on the ship's hull. The machines at work there varied greatly in size, but they all seemed to be moving with feverish activity. Whatever their purposes, they were busy little mechs. "Chief?" prompted Sisko. O'Brien glanced up from his readings and shook his head slightly in bafflement. "You've got to admire their technology," he finally offered. "They're ingenious little murderers." He gestured at the main screen. "They're disassembling parts of the structure to split the hive into two." "We can see that," Sisko observed. "But why?" "Beg your pardon, Captain. I wasn't clear," O'Brien replied. "They're splitting the ship into two ships. Those mechs are taking the first ship apart very carefully and then reproducing the part that's been lost. It's a mechanical equivalent of an amoeba splitting into two, and obviously for the same reason. They're breeding." Sisko stared at the screen in shock. "Two ships," he repeated. "They're making a second hive?" "Right, sir," said O'Brien. "And a heck of a lot faster than I'd have believed possible. I'd say that in 2 or 3 days, tops, there will be 2 hives sitting there in space." He shrugged. "Now we know why they demolished Durain. They needed the spare materials for the split." "And if one ship can destroy a planet," Kira offered, 2 should be able to demolish a star system." Sisko nodded. Kira had made the most important point. "Then we'd better ensure that they do nothing of the kind. How long till we're in transporter range?" 2 minutes, Kira answered. "Fine. We'll contact you every half hour. If you don't hear from us for any reason, then contact Starfleet and inform them." Sisko gave her a grave look. "And then, use your best judgment." Do you understand me?
Perfectly.
Kira stood up, ready to take the command chair. I'm not going to start shooting up the hive without good cause, I promise. But if anything happens to the three of you, that may just be good cause. Look after my ship and crew, Sisko ordered. Then he rested his hand on her arm. Like Shakar, I trust you, Nerys.
I won't let you down, she promised.
I know. Sisko turned to Dax. Well, old man, time to get moving. Dax and Odo fell in beside him as he headed for the turbolift. Now, thought Sisko, we discover just how good a diplomat I really am. The stars were as magnificent as they had ever been, but Sana could not bring herself to look upon them. Ever since she had been a youngster, she had loved only two things, the stars and Torque. Now she had lost the latter and was cutting herself off from the former. Her life could hardly be more miserable than it was now.
Sana.
It was her old tutor, Bree. She was a little bowed by age, but her eyes and spirits were as bright as ever.
What's wrong? Are you ill?
Ill?
Sana sighed.
In my soul, yes, very ill. Bree came closer and stroked the edge of Sana's shell.
Want to talk about it?
We oldsters have little left to enjoy in life but talk.
You are not old, Sana replied.
Flattering, but not true, Bree answered with a woof of amusement. And have I not always taught you to be a scrupulously accurate observer? Sana almost managed a smile at that. She gestured out of the observation window. Those stars are old. You are not. Cheat. But Bree was amused. Now, if you feel up to it, can you not tell me what troubles you? Composing herself, Sana discovered that she didn't know where to begin. Finally she said, Life is so wrong. Bree snorted again. That is a statement I have heard many times from youngsters. Let me tell you something. It rarely gets any more right as you age. Now, what ails you? My determination was today. Then I should think you would be very happy, Bree objected. I recall my determination day quite clearly. Malco and I shared that evening a good meal, a bottle of Kling, and a bed. It was a lot of fun. I shall be sharing nothing, Sana replied, wrinkling her snout. I have been assigned to Team 2. Ah, and the only male for you is on Team 1, eh? Bree shrugged her shoulders as much as she could, given her arthritis and the extra weight of her aging shell. Yes. Well, the split isn't final for 2 days, Bree pointed out. You could have quite a busy time with him before that. I do not simply want to mate with him, Sana answered. I wish to be one with him. Take what you can get, suggested Bree. Then later there will be another to take his place. Sana simply couldn't accept this cynicism. I do not want another. I want only Torque. Maybe now, agreed Bree. But you will come to your senses later. Did everyone get this jaundiced with age? Sana shook her head. That is not necessarily true. But even if I did wish only to mate, it would not be possible. Torque is a hive master, and is currently very occupied with the great design. He would have no time to spare for mere mating. Then he is a very foolish male. Bree snickered to herself. Anyway, if he is a hive master, he could get you reassigned to Team 1. Sana was shocked. That would be an immoral use of power, and Torque would not agree to such a thing. You youngsters, Bree snorted. It is done all the time, believe me. I knew Dron when he was younger, and some of the abuses of power he has managed over the years would shock you.
Torque opposes such abuses, Sana pointed out. How could he then indulge in them? Besides which, there are heavier weights on his shell. Bree wrinkled her snout. Heavier weights than mating on a young male's mind? That is something I do not hear very often. What concerns this prodigious individual that you love? Sana took a deep breath, knowing she was violating a confidence, and knowing that she could not stay silent. The planet that was just absorbed, she said slowly. There were inhabitants still upon it. What? All traces of humor had vanished from Bree's elderly face now. Instead, there was anger and grim attentiveness. You are sure of this? I am. Sana bowed her head. Torque himself confirmed this to me. There were thousands of sentient beings on the world that we destroyed. Bree's face was twisted with anger and horror. Sentient? You are certain of this? I am. Torque informed me that they were insane and refused to leave the planet despite an offer of assistance. Then they attacked our ships, which were forced to defend themselves. Chittering angrily under her breath, Bree scowled, obviously deep in thought. Then she looked up again. Insane or no, the Hive Masters had no right to kill them. They should have been removed by force if necessary, but not killed. I agree, Sana informed her. The guilt of what we have done hangs heavily on my shell. And this youngster of yours, snapped Bree, this prodigy of morality, he did nothing at all to stop this massacre? He wanted to, Sana explained, desperately seeking to rebuild Torque's image in the older scientist's mind. But he is new and did not know what to do or say. He is consumed with guilt and anger also. And so he should be. Then Bree seemed to realize how distressed Sana was. She stroked the edge of the younger one's shell. If you say he is a good person, then I am certain he will do what he can. The problem is that Drawn will not allow it. She wrinkled her snout in disgust. As I told you, I knew that one when I was younger. Even then he was devious, a liar and a manipulator. I doubt he has changed at all in the decades since. You can be certain that he has plans for your youngster. No matter how moral and clever your one-to-be is, he will not be a match for Drawn. Then there is nothing to be done? Asked Sana in despair. That was not what I said, snapped Bree angrily. You are a scientist, child. There is always something that may be done in all circumstances. The point is to discover the best way to do things. If what you say is true, and I can see by your distress that it is, then there will be plenty of people who, like us, will abhor what has happened. We cannot allow this to happen again. But how can we change things? Asked Sana miserably. The Hive Masters are in command. They make the decisions. Bree snorted again. For now, perhaps. With a shock, Sana realized what her elderly mentor meant. You are speaking of mutiny, she whispered, almost too afraid to say the word. I am speaking of sanity, Bree argued. If the Hive Masters make decisions that go against the beliefs of the Hive, then they should be masters no more. Is that not logical? It is also treasonous, Sana gasped. Since the 203rd Hive, there has never been a rebellion against the authority of the Hive Masters, and the 203rd Hive lost. Then it is high time someone questioned the authority of those fools and murderers, Bree snapped. It may be that we shall lose also, but I will not stand by and accept the murder of even the insane as justifiable. Sana gazed at her mentor with new respect. And nor shall I, she said, quietly but firmly. What has happened is appalling and wrong. A repetition of it must be prevented at all costs. Bree tapped her on the shell. "You have courage, my child," she said approvingly. "Nurture it. You are likely to have great need of it in the days ahead. Now, it's a fine night, and I am going to talk a little treason, so you'd better keep yourself busy while I am gone. You will have to cover for me, child." She winked. "Get those young eyes of yours back to observing, and make plenty of notes for the both of us, eh?" The room in which Cisco, Dax, and Odo materialized was completely unremarkable. It was clearly the anteroom to somewhere more interesting, but contained only small tables and some very odd-looking pieces of furniture, along with two of the armadillo-like aliens, both armed with slender, rifle-like weapons. Though neither had the devices pointed at any of the arrivals, they were clearly there to prevent any trouble that Cisco or the others might offer. "I will inform the hive masters that you have arrived," one of the guards announced as he exited the room. The other guards said nothing and barely glanced in their direction. Cisco decided that the best thing to do was to return the silent treatment. He glanced at Dax and then at one of the odd pieces of furniture. It resembled a long, stiff board that was inclined backward at about a 15-degree angle. About 2 feet from the floor was a horn-like projection. There were several of these odd items about the room. "What do you think that is?" he asked her. "Probably a chair," she answered. Smiling at the silent guard, she gestured. "Look at those shells of theirs. Wonderful for protection, but I doubt they can sit down. They must use these boards to lean against, and the protrusion to rest upon." "That makes sense," Cisco agreed. "But a bit uncomfortable for me, I'm afraid. I think I'll remain standing." He wandered across to the doorway, but could see only a short corridor through it. The 3 visible walls were blank. Then at the far end an iris opening appeared. The guard who had remained with them turned at the slight mechanical sound, and then gestured with his weapon. "You may proceed," he announced. "Thank you," Cisco said politely. He led the way to the iris, and then stepped through. They were now inside a much larger chamber. In the center of the room was a large table. Around it were more than a dozen of the odd chairs, and most were occupied. At the head of the table was the alien Cisco recognized as Dron. "Hive Master," he said politely. "Captain," Dron responded, inclining his head slightly. "Please, will you and your companions join us?" "Thank you." Cisco crossed to the table where a room had been cleared for them. There was nowhere to sit, but Cisco didn't feel like resting at this moment anyway. "You will forgive my manners if I get right to the point of this meeting?" he asked. Dron spread his arms. "If you wish, Captain. We have no desire to alarm you or offend you." It's too late for that, Cisco thought, the image of Durain in his mind. Aloud he said, "We could not help but notice as we approached that there is considerable work going on the skin of the hive. My engineer tells me that this seems to be aimed at splitting the hive into 2 separate, complete hives." Dron inclined his head again. "Your engineer is quite perceptive. That is indeed what is being done." "May I ask the reason for this?" "The reason?" Dron appeared genuinely puzzled. "Surely that is obvious, Captain. We are doubling our chances of survival. When the work is completed, we shall have 2 hives, and our population is to be divided between them. Each hive shall then go on its separate way." "And where will this separate way take them?" asked Cisco. Dron tapped commands into the computer pad that lay on the table before him. "I will call up the schematics for you if you wish, Captain," he answered. "We do not intend to hide anything from you." "Ah." There was clearly a holographic projector beneath the surface of the table, for a very detailed map of the local area sprang into being. One star was marked in red, and he recognized it immediately as Durain. "That is where we are now," Dron said. When the fission is complete, the two hives will move in separate directions. He tapped in further commands, and the red ball of light split in two. Each then started to move across the projected starscape. Dax leaned forward. Her eyes narrowed as she watched the simulated motion. "Benjamin," she said softly, "one of those hives is going to head into Cardassian space. The other—" She took a deep breath. "The other is aimed at Bajor." Sisko turned to face Drawn again. "And what will these hives do?" he demanded. "Is what happened to Durain going to happen again?" "Absorption?" asked Drawn. "That was necessary to begin the fission, and once it is accomplished we shall need to gather new materials to restock the two hives. Further planets must then be mined." "Mined?" Sisko echoed, appalled. "You're talking about the destruction of more planets." He jabbed a finger at the projection. "You're telling me that you aim to demolish Bajor." Chapter 14. Apparently unable to comprehend what the fuss was about, Drawn blinked. "If that is the name of the planet, then yes. We aim to absorb Bajor next." "You can't do that," Sisko exclaimed, striving to keep his temper in check. "Billions of people live there. You can't condemn them all to death." "We are condemning no one, Captain," Drawn replied. "We do not wish to harm any living being, no matter how insane they may be. We are quite prepared to wait a reasonable length of time until the planet has been evacuated before it is absorbed. Would 3 of their days be sufficient?" Sisko could hardly believe what he was hearing. 3 days, he echoed hollowly. "To evacuate an entire planet?" "We could wait longer," Drawn said, obviously believing he was being generous. "As many as 7, should it prove necessary." "You can't be serious," Odo snapped. "You expect the Bajorans simply to pack up and leave their homes?" "Homes?" Drawn appeared to be puzzled again. "It is only a planet. Why would they not agree to leave if it is necessary to our survival?" "Because they live there," snarled Odo. "The planet is their home." "That is absurd," one of the other hive masters broke in. I am Makarn, Science Master," he added. "It is simply not possible that any, sane race would choose to live on the surface of a planet." "Quite," agreed Drawn. "After all, Captain, did you not tell me that you are all living on a space station?" He smiled. "And do you consider yourself sane or not?" Sisko shook his head slightly. "It is true that we all live on a space station," he agreed slowly. "But that alone is no decider of sanity. We have all also lived on planets, and may yet do so again." "There is no reasoning with such creatures!" exclaimed another of the hive masters. He glowered at Sisko. "Clearly they are not completely civilized or intelligent." Dax stared back at the alien until he flinched and looked away. "Is that your sole criterion for determining mental state?" she asked mildly. "Whether a person lives on a planetary surface or in space?" "Not entirely," Drawn replied smoothly. "But it is quite obviously the basis for such a judgment. No sane person would subject himself to the vagaries and hazards of an exposed world." "That's a very far-flung accusation," Sisko commented. "And since obviously none of you have lived on the surface of a planet, it smacks to me more of prejudice than fact." "I told you they were incapable of reason," the angry hive master broke out again. "Pakat," Drawn said admonishingly. "They are still our guests for the time being. Please do not be so rude to them." He turned back to Sisko. "My apologies, Captain, but Pakat is the defense master. It is his responsibility to keep the hive safe. He takes his duties very seriously." "Ah." Sisko stared at Pakat, determined to remember his face. "And it was you, then, who led this massacre? Defense! Paquette corrected, with as much dignity as he could. "We were attacked first." "No," Sisko answered. "You began the engagement by attempting to steal what does not belong to you, a world belonging to an intelligent species. As a representative of the United Federation of Planets, I have to inform you that this alone makes you the aggressors in our eyes." "We are not interested in your warped moral perspectives," Paquette snapped. "Captain," Dron said hastily, "how could anyone own a planet, or a star, or a comet? They are simply resources to be utilized to their fullest. The inhabitants of the world we absorbed were not using it, and we needed it. Why, then, the accusation of theft?" Odo growled, "You just don't understand, do you? You can't simply take a planet because you want to." Dron spread his arms. "We did not want it. We needed it. And we need more planets for further raw materials. We shall take them as we must. It is not theft. It is survival." Sisko was feeling very frustrated. It was quite clear that they were simply not getting through to these hive masters. Their attitudes and philosophies were fundamentally different from anything Sisko had ever experienced before. "Perhaps what is needed here," he suggested, "is better understanding of each other's point of view." Dron inclined his head. "How do you mean, Captain?" "We don't seem to be comprehending one another," Sisko answered. "Perhaps what is needed is that we spend some time together in trying to see the other's perspective." An elderly hive master spoke up. "Ah, I begin to see," he commented. "I am Hosir, master of very little at the moment." He moved forward. "Perhaps if you were to visit with us for a while and see the hive itself, with one of us as your guide, you would better understand what we believe in." "Precisely," agreed Sisko. "Perhaps you would be good enough to honor us by showing us around." Hosir snorted. "I can barely walk across the room without pain, Captain. I would be a poor guide, believe me." He gestured at a younger person beside him. "Might I suggest Torque instead? He is a very capable young man, and possessed of both great knowledge and great enthusiasm." "No!" Paquette exclaimed. He glared angrily at the visitors. "This is obviously merely a trick by these creatures to study us for weaknesses. They have shown in words and action that they mean to attack us." There was always one paranoid, Sisko reflected. "No," he said gently. "We genuinely wish to understand your people, and I think that this is the best way to do it." He turned to Dron. "If you are worried that we are here to act as spies, then simply tell Torque not to show us anything to do with your war effort." "We have no war effort," Dron said smoothly. "We do not attack. We only defend ourselves." He considered for a moment. "But your point is well made, Captain." He turned to Torque. "Will you be good enough to show our visitors about the hive, Torque? Allow them to converse freely and answer their questions to the best of your ability. But do not take them to the defense areas." Torque nodded, and Sisko saw a gleam of something in the young alien's eyes. Worry? Eagerness? "I would be honored," Torque replied. "I agree that it is important that our motives and thoughts be correctly understood." "Excellent," Dron said. "Now, Captain, perhaps we could offer you a little refreshment before your explorations commence." "Thank you," Sisko answered. "That is very gracious of you. Also, may I have your permission to contact my ship and inform them of what we have already discussed? I told them I would check in every 30 of our minutes." "Of course, Captain." Dron inclined his head. "Do you desire privacy for this contact?" "No," Sisko said. "After all, we are being open with one another, aren't we?" He smiled and then tapped his communicator. "Sisko to Kira." "Kira here," came back the Major's voice. "Is everything okay, Captain?" "We're fine," Sisko answered. "And we're about to get a guided tour. which may take some time. However, we do have some news that you may wish to pass along. The hive is indeed undergoing fission, as the chief surmised. When it finishes this process in a couple of days, there will be 2 hives. One will be heading into Cardassian space. The other will go toward Bajor. There was no mistaking the tension in Kira's voice. "Are you saying what I think?" "Yes." Sisko kept his voice as calm as possible. "Hive Master Dron informs me that his people aim to process Bajor next. He is willing to give your people a week to evacuate the planet." "Captain, that's crazy," Kira protested. "Those murdering—" "That's enough," Sisko snapped. "You have your orders, Major. Pass along the information to Shakar and stand ready for further messages from me. Sisko out." Dron blinked mildly. "Dear me," he murmured. "She sounds like a very excitable person. I do hope you can rely on her." "I know I can." Sisko smiled without warmth. "And it's her home planet that you're talking about destroying next. I think she has every right to be excitable. Now, did you mention refreshments?" Shakar switched off his screen, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and sighed. Then he sat back in his chair, almost too numb to feel anything. Nerys had delivered what virtually amounted to a death warrant for Bajor just moments ago. Shakar knew that he should be feverishly working on defense plans, evacuation plans, and the prophets knew maybe a dozen other plans, too. But for the moment it all seemed utterly futile. At this moment there were thousands of refugees from Durain 4 either here on the planet or else on Deep Space Nine, all seeking to regain some semblance of life. They had fled one destroyed world and were now apparently sitting on another doomed world, along with several billion other Bajorans. And they were all his responsibility. Shakar was their first minister, and it was up to him to cope with this overwhelming situation. But there was, practically speaking, nothing much he could do. Oh, the aliens had offered Bajor a week. A week! To evacuate the population. Aside from the fact that the logistics of such an exodus were impossible even in tenfold the time, it really wasn't a viable option anyway. Shakar knew that the majority of the population would refuse to leave their homes, no matter what odds were against them. That left him exactly one option: to fight. But Bajor had never concentrated on arming itself again. In the resistance war with the Cardassian occupiers, the Bajorans had used light weaponry. They had nothing else. Now, 3 years after the occupation was ended, they still had very little in terms of planetary defenses. They had concentrated on rebuilding their wrecked world and shattered economy, not on preparing for war. They had all looked to their Federation alliance for aid in that quarter. Aid that would now not be coming in time. Shakar knew that Captain Sisko and his associates would do everything in their power to defend Bajor, but frankly, it was nowhere near enough against this alien hive. The recent destruction of the Enterprise had left a large gap in the Federation coverage of this sector, and it would take too long for replacement vessels to arrive that might have the firepower to take on the hive. When the hive came hunting for Bajor, everything that Deep Space Nine and the ground defenses of Bajor could throw at it would barely slow it down. Visions of the destruction of Durain filled his head. That would be the fate of Bajor. The Bajor he'd pledged to govern and protect to the best of his ability. Damn it, he thought. It just isn't fair. Why was the fate of his world and his entire people now resting so heavily on his shoulders? What could he be expected to do? What was it that the prophets required of him? Shakar. His head jerked up as he was startled out of his troubling thoughts. For a second, he thought he'd imagined the voice, but then there was a movement in the shadows at the end of his office, and a robed figure emerged. "Kai Wynn," he exclaimed in surprise. "How did you get in here? I gave explicit orders that I was not to be disturbed." With the regal serenity that Shakar was certain she practiced in front of mirrors when alone, Kai Wynn glided across the room. She inclined her head slightly. "I am sure that you did, my child," she murmured, oozing sympathy and understanding. She could fake them very well, Shakar knew. "But you are already disturbed, are you not, by your thoughts?" "How did you get in here?" he repeated, standing up and glaring down at her. He resented her patronizing attitude, and had never accepted her in the role of Kai, spiritual leader of all Bajor. She was perhaps one of the least spiritual people he'd ever met in his life. All she cared about was her own power. "There are ways known only to the prophets, my child," she finally answered evasively. "And secret passages known only to the religious orders, I'll warrant," Shakar snapped. "Well, you're here now, so say your piece before I have you escorted out. Oh, very respectfully, of course." Wynne smiled serenely. "Of course," she agreed. "I did not think for an instant you would show the Kai less respect than she deserves. But I came to discuss your needs and the needs of Bajor at this troubled time." "What do you know of this troubled time?" he asked her. "Only what the prophets have seen fit to show me," Wynne answered. Her hands appeared from the arms of her ornamental robes. One held a small scroll. "I have been studying the third prophecy of Andiki, and it is obviously about the crisis in which we find ourselves." "With all due respect to the prophets," began Shakar, but she cut him off with a gesture. "Yes, let us all show due respect to the prophets." She glared mildly at him. "I understand your anger and frustration, my child, but this is very relevant. Listen." She unraveled the scroll and began to read from it. "The land will be torn asunder as great wings hover. Death will be on all who witness, and mourning on the lips of the few who survive. Weep for the lost, the children, the land. Weep, for it and they are no more. In that terrible day shall all my people be one. Stand firm, for one shall protect you, and two shall convert. In their faith, Bajor will be made whole." She let the scroll roll up again and slipped it back inside her voluminous sleeves. "Surely, my child, you can see what at least a part of this means." Shakar considered himself as devout as the next person, but he knew that the prophets always spoke in riddles. Many of the prophecies were couched in obscure terms and subject to any number of interpretations. The third book of Andiki is notoriously used by many unscrupulous and misguided individuals to predict the end of the world as we know it, he said. "I am surprised that you have joined their number, Kai Wynne." She didn't let the accusation annoy her. "It is so used by people who lack true insight," she answered calmly. "But to those that the prophets have anointed, the book reveals many mysteries. Besides," she allowed a fleeting smile to cross her face, "I can hardly be called misguided if I see the end of Bajor in the current situation, can I? After all, the hive will be heading here next, I believe, and that will surely presage the end of the world if we do not act wisely." "How did you hear about that?" he demanded. Someone must have informed her, despite his order for absolute secrecy. "How I know is not important," she said. "What we are to do, however, is vital. Surely you can see that the first stanza refers to the destruction of Durain 4. That needs no interpretation, my child. The second stanza, however, is more difficult. One shall protect you, and two shall convert." Shakar regarded her suspiciously. "Even if I grant that the first stanza may be about Durain, I don't see what the second means at all." "Of course you do not, my child." Wynne spread her arms and smiled. "That is why I am here. If I cannot understand the prophets correctly, who can?" "My pet Draka could understand the prophets better than you," thought Shakar, but he was not foolish enough to say it aloud. Wynne was cunning, and she clearly had something in mind for this meeting. "And what is your interpretation?" he asked. "The one who stands firm is obviously myself," she replied seriously. "I stand firm as I always have in the faith of the prophets. The two who shall convert." She gave him a pitying gaze. "You are, I am afraid, one of those. Your lack of piety and trust in the prophets is hardly secret, is it?" "I do my duty by the prophets," Shakar snapped. "No one can say otherwise." Wynne shook her head chidingly. "None of us do all of our duty, my child. Even I sometimes fall short of what is expected of me. But we must all strive harder to obey the will of the prophets." "I don't see that your prophecy gives me anything to even consider," he replied, irritated at her fake piety. "And you still haven't told me who the second person is who must convert." "The answer to both is tied to the other," Kai Wynne informed him. "You alone, commanding the government, could never hope to stand against these murderous alien predators. If you stand with me, and the religious forces who follow me, then there is a better chance. To win the forthcoming battle, though, you will need further aid." "From whom?" growled Shakar. "The Federation cannot reach us, and the Cardassians would never agree to help. They have a hive of their own to contend with. There is nobody else who can help." "Oh?" asked a fresh voice. "I am sorry to hear that I have been forgotten so quickly." Shakar spun about. He was going to tear this room apart to find that secret entrance when Wynne was gone. Now, who could... He stopped cold, staring at the tall, saturnine man who had stepped out of the shadows. "Jarrow," he breathed. Jarrow's face broke into a smile. "It's good to see that I haven't been forgotten during my absence," he murmured, moving closer to the Kai. End of Side 3.
Side 4. Objective Bajor by John Peel. Continuing on page 123. Forgotten? Shakar could hardly believe this. How could he have forgotten Jarrow's abortive coup 2 years earlier? "No, but we had hoped that someone had murdered you." Dear me, such hostility. Jarrow shook his head in mock sadness. "No, I have been in retirement, preparing myself for the time my day would come again." Shakar's eyes darted from Jarrow to Wynne. They had worked together on the attempted coup, he knew, but nothing had been proven against the Kai. "Are you two attempting another takeover of Bajor?" he asked, almost laughing. "If so, you could hardly have chosen a worse time. In a week, Bajor will most likely no longer exist." "This is no revolution," Wynne said, trying to look shocked at the accusation. "Did you not hear my words? Two shall convert." "Him?" Shakar looked at the arch-traitor with loathing. "I know it may sound a little difficult to believe," Jarrow said smoothly, "but the Kai is correct. I am not here to fight you, but our joint enemies. I will throw in my forces and my weapons with yours. Working together, the three of us should be able to better defend Bajor than we could if we did not cooperate. Surely even you can see that, Shakar." Fighting back his desire to throw Jarrow out of the window or into a jail cell, Shakar forced himself to think. "You want to help. That is all." Jarrow spread his hands in a smile. "And afterward," probed Shakar, "immunity? A place in the government? What is your price?" "I have no price," Jarrow answered. "I can see that you find this difficult to believe, but in this instance it is true."
He raised his eyebrows. "May I be frank with you?" "Please do," Shakar said sarcastically. Jarrow inclined his head. "It is true that I think I am the best man for the seat you occupy. I always will think so. But that seat is of no use to either of us if Bajor no longer exists. Thus, while there is this threat to Bajor, I propose a truce between us all, so that we may join our efforts into a unified defense against the invaders. After we defeat them, then we can begin to fight among ourselves again. For now, let us forget all politics but the one aim of saving the world that we all love. What do you say, Shakar?" Shakar considered his options. Much as he distrusted them both, Wynne and Jarrow both had valid points. Divided, their forces and efforts would be next to useless. Together, well, they might not win the upcoming battle, but at least they'd stand a chance. Shakar made his decision. "I cannot refuse anyone whose wish it is to save our world," he replied, his heart heavy. "I accept your aid while the battle remains to be fought. And I pray to all the prophets that I don't live to regret this decision," he thought bitterly. Jarrow grasped his forearm in greeting and smiled. "Then we are, at least temporarily, on the same side." "The one and the two," Kai Wynne announced officiously. "In their faith Bajor shall be made whole," she quoted. "What can withstand us now?" Chapter 15. "Do you really think that this will do any good, Benjamin?" Sisko blinked and then smiled slightly at Dax. "Old man, at the moment I'm willing to grasp at any straws. Besides, I don't think these aliens are really evil." "They're just very twisted," Odo observed. "They're willing to destroy Bajor and billions of people without even meaning them any harm." He growled. "How do you ever hope to reason with these people, Captain?" "By finding some common ground," Sisko answered. "I refuse to believe we can't get through to them. This tour may show us what their culture is like, but I'm also praying that it'll show Torque what we're like, and maybe show us some chink in their mental armor that we can penetrate." "An admirable goal, Captain," agreed Odo, "but I can't help feeling that it may be a futile one. These hive-dwellers show very little interest in logic." "But Benjamin is right to try," Dax argued. "It may be the last chance that Bajor has." "I agree," Odo admitted. "But I'd prefer a better one." "So would I," Sisko confessed. He stroked his chin. "Odo, thus far these aliens don't know that you're not one of us." Odo's eyes sparkled. "And you'd like to keep it that way, eh? It might be a good idea at that." At that moment, their guide came hurrying back down the short corridor toward them. Considering how short his legs were, Torque managed quite a respectable pace. "We are ready to begin now," he announced. "I have reserved a travel tube strictly for our use. We can go wherever in the hive you desire, with the exception of secured areas, I am afraid." "We quite understand," Sisko said smoothly. "To be honest, what I'm most interested in is seeing what your people are like, what the hive is like, in fact." He gestured at the walls of the corridor. "This is all we've really seen of the place so far. I hope it isn't all metal walls." "Oh, no!" exclaimed Torque aghast. "The hive is a place of beauty and culture." He considered for a moment. "Perhaps an overview would be best to begin with." He ushered them along the corridor like a fussy mother hen. "This is really a remarkable privilege for me, to be allowed to show you around. You are, of course, the first aliens I have ever encountered." They had reached the entrance to some kind of travel vehicle now,
and Torque gestured for them to enter. Cisco had to bend slightly to do so, as it was built for the average hive-dweller, who was a good 1.5 feet shorter than he was. Inside was a small driver's position with a control pad and stick, and 5 of the board-like seats. Torque moved to the controls and glanced back at his passengers. "I am sorry that you must stand," he apologized, "but it did not occur to us that you would find our seating uncomfortable." "It's quite all right," Dax assured him. "This way we'll be able to get a better view, assuming there is a view." "Oh, yes," he assured her. "A very delightful one, once we are out of the confines of the complex here." His fingers rapped on the panel, and he seized the control stick firmly. "We begin." The travel vehicle moved quite slowly to begin with, and then started to accelerate. The device was almost silent, save for a low hum of a motor. Torque cleared his throat. "Please feel free to ask questions," he told them. "I will be as frank with you as I can. We have very little to hide from you." "Then why do you dislike people who live on planets?" asked Odo, getting straight to the heart of the matter. "It sounds like a mania to me." Torque, slightly shocked. "I had imagined that you understood the matter fully, since you live on a space station. Do you not find life in space so much better than it could ever be on the surface of a planet?" "It's different," Dax answered, "and it is possible to enjoy both. Surely your race lived on a planet once." "Of course," agreed Torque. "But we also were unicellular creatures once. We evolved through that and on to further stages in life. Likewise, we have evolved beyond living on planets and into a more natural and fulfilling stage of life." Cisco was starting to understand. "And you think that anyone who lives on the surface of a planet by choice is a lower form of intelligent life, then?" "Is that not logical?" asked Torque. "It is natural progression. Life begins in the oceans, then moves to the land, then into space. To remain in any one place is counter to natural reason." Odo snorted. "Then you'd have a hard time comprehending some life forms in our galaxy." "Right," agreed Cisco. "On Tirek 8, for example, there is a species of highly intelligent squid-like creatures that spend all of their lives in the ocean. They have a tremendous civilization, one that has existed for 16,000 years. Torque shook his head. "That sounds implausible," he admitted, "though of course I accept your word that this civilization does exist. But it must obviously be an inferior one, and stagnant." "Ah," he exclaimed before they could argue with him, "now we emerge." The travel tube shot out of the featureless tunnel they had been traversing and into the open. Cisco's eyes opened wide as he took in the view before them, and he couldn't suppress a gasp of surprise and admiration. He heard Dax give a similar exclamation and stared raptly out of the large windows of the travel vehicle. The view was panoramic and splendid. Cisco estimated that they were probably about a third of the way down the hive's main axis, and a quarter of the way toward the center of the vessel. They were therefore looking down a long tube as they headed what he decided to call south. The walls curved gently upward on either side of them, enveloping their world until they met together over their heads. Either there was artificial gravity inside the hive, or else gravity was provided by rotating this inner core, because the hive spread over every available surface. There were buildings all around. They were constructed of crystal and metal, of many varying designs and heights. Towers, minarets, spires, and bridge-like structures abounded. Domes in different hues of the rainbow were scattered about, and walkways on the ground and at higher levels. It was like seeing the promenade of Deep Space Nine multiplied 1,000,000-fold. Spaced at irregular and pleasing intervals between the buildings were parks of varying shapes and contents. Trees and tree-like growths abounded also in the cities themselves. There were vines and other climbing plants,
and thousands upon thousands of floral sites. There were vast rivers running through all of this, and lakes and ponds. One river wound its way directly above their heads. Cisco could make out boats upon the surfaces. There were vast tracts of what appeared to be farmlands, and in the distance... "Are those mountains?" he asked in awe. They could create a view like this any day in a holosuite, but this one was real. What an engineering feat! "Small ones," Torque apologized. "Beyond them is the ocean." "You have an ocean in this ship?" Dax gasped in astonishment. "The hive is very large," Torque explained, "and we wished to preserve as many diverse habitats of our home world as we could." Cisco shook his head. "This has to be one of the greatest engineering projects I've ever witnessed," he confessed, "and I've seen many." "It was a great and noble work," said Torque with understandable pride, "and it is our responsibility to see that it goes on." Down the central axis of the hive were what looked to be small suns blazing away, to provide light and heat for the world within, clearly. "Do they always burn?" asked Dax. "No," Torque replied. "We maintain the illusion of day and night within the hive. It was discovered that we function best when given regular light and dark cycles." "It's much the same with us," Cisco observed. "Part of growing up as a species on a planet, I imagine," he added. "You retain some aspects of them, even when they're long gone." And then, above and below them, Cisco saw the dark line that was growing slightly wider all the time, the line where the hive was splitting. Soon there would be 2 hives, and then one less Bajor. "Could we see what is happening where the hive is being split?" Cisco asked. "Of course," agreed Torque. "In fact, one of my friends is assigned to a station at the break." He pulled a small computer pad from a recess in his shell and tapped at it for a moment. "Sector 1274, he announced. "If we visit there, I am sure he will be happy to show you what is being done." "Fine," Cisco agreed. Perhaps, once they were there, he might get some idea of the strength and composition of the hive. And, with luck, some idea of what he could do next. Tuke worked quietly and efficiently, completing his task. The worker drones were now set to detonate on his signal, to be sent from Harl's comp. The 3 drones he had selected were all back at work again, after being repaired under Harl's authorization. All that was left was to ensure that Harl would be somewhere near the blast zone, without a good alibi for what was to follow. Fingering the small tranquilizer dart he had stolen, Tuke headed for the maintenance dome where Harl was working. He quietly irised the door and glanced around the bay. There were 2 further drones in for repair, and he could see a shape hunched across one of them, intent on his work. Harl was very good with machinery and was allowed to work unsupervised for the most part, which was perfect for Tuke's plan. Silently, Tuke slipped across the floor, checking as he went that the bay actually was empty. Then he carefully ascertained that the lone repairer was in fact Harl. He wanted no last-minute errors here. Perfect. The tranquilizer dart was in his fingers, and Tuke moved in swiftly. The dart slipped into a gap between Harl's shell plates, and then out again. With a sigh, Harl collapsed forward onto the drone he had been repairing. He hadn't even looked up, so there was no chance Harl had seen who had attacked him. The drug would keep him insensate for about half an hour, which was more than enough time. Pleased with the progress of his plan, Tuke exited the repair bay, irising the door closed behind him. He had Harl's comp with him, ready to transmit the lethal signal as soon as he was far enough away not to be affected by the blast. Cisco couldn't restrain his admiration for the hive. "How long have you been traveling?" he asked Torque. "The hive looks almost brand new." "We have been scrupulous in checking for errors and in maintenance work," Torque answered.
The hive has been in our care for 2,716 generations. Each generation lasts about 200 of your years. Dax raised her eyebrows, impressed. 500,000 years, she murmured. And since the start of the flight, you've never known any other world? We need no other worlds, except as resources, Torque answered proudly. The first hive built well, and they knew that the crossing would take this long. It is fortunate that we were not delayed, as we were getting close to the end of our supplies, which is why it was so imperative that we restock. The only problem with restocking, Cisco mused, was that it had involved the annihilation of Durain 4. Magnificent technology, he commented, but a lamentable use for it, to destroy worlds and kill people. Torque looked pained. That is not our intention, he protested. We gave the people of that world a chance to leave. They responded by attacking us. He sighed. Do you not weary of covering the same ground continuously? I keep hoping that we can impress on you what your people have done, Cisco answered. However you attempt to justify it, your hive has murdered 500,000 people. Torque glared at him. Do you think I do not know that? He asked. I hear their screams in my head all the time. I am not without softer parts, Captain. I do care. But if the choice is between an insane alien species and the hive, then my duty is clearly to the hive. It has been that way since the first hive created the great design, and it must remain that way for us. The great design, echoed Odo. That smacks to me of excuses, not reasons. What is this great design? The travel tube was passing through one of the small forest areas now. Cisco couldn't help admiring the beauty of the setting. Outside, adult and young members of the hive were playing and enjoying themselves. There were no doubt lovers walking hand in hand, and parents playing the equivalent of baseball with their children. There would be elderly people watching the young, envying their strength and agility. It was a serene and cheerful picture, if you could forget the darker side of the hive's purposes for a moment. The great design was formulated in the beginning by the members of the first hive, Torque explained in answer to Odo's question. We once lived on a planet, as you surmised. The star that was our sun was unstable, however, and showed signs that it was going to explode. A supernova, Dax muttered. Your science was clearly advanced to be able to detect this so far ahead of time. Yes, agreed Torque. We already had rudimentary space travel capabilities, and had explored the stars and worlds closest to our own. None was fit for any kind of life, and we had run out of hope of simply moving our population to a safer world. Then the scientists of the first hive evolved a brilliant idea. They proposed taking one of the rocky worlds in our system and converting it into a colony that would be able to travel between the stars. It was risky and audacious, but they were insistent that this was the only hope for our people. Eventually it was agreed that they be allowed to try. Construction of the hive took almost the full generation, but it was accomplished. Life forms from our world were transported to the hive, and then our population was evacuated. The great design began. Dax frowned. But according to our calculations, the hive has only just entered our galaxy from intergalactic space. It shows that you have come from the direction of what we call the Magellanic Clouds. Why did you not simply seek a world in your own galaxy, instead of risking such a dangerous and lengthy crossing? Because, as work was underway on the hive, we finally made contact with an alien species, the first we ever met until a few days ago. They were warlike and aggressive, and had conquered a large part of the Magellanic Cloud. We were forced for the first time to build ships of war to defend ourselves. We won some of the battles, but their strength was far too great for this to continue for long. They pressured us continually,
and we knew that we could never hold out. We could not be assured of a refuge in our own galaxy, and therefore the goal was set to make the great crossing here. The hive was launched and began its journey. The enemy could not follow us, as their ships were not able to spend long periods away from fuel. The hive gathers most of its fuel from the thinly stretched material between the stars and the galaxies. Hence the large wings on your ship, Dax commented. They serve as collectors for the intergalactic gases, and no doubt condensers also. Correct, agreed Torque. It is an efficient system that has lasted us well. Between stars instead of between galaxies, matter is more common, and we are gathering reserves. When the split is achieved, both hives will be well fueled. And then what? Demanded Odo. You have told us why the great design was necessary, but you still have not told us what it is. There was a sharp ping from the control panel, and Torque glanced down. We are arriving at the work area where Harl labors, he announced. We shall be decelerating. Sisko watched as the travel tube emerged from the forest and recreational area and into what was clearly an industrial complex. Huge machines were moving between the large buildings. Many of them carried flat plates, and others bundles of machinery or electronics. Some carried spars and beams, and others equipment that Sisko couldn't immediately identify. The buildings themselves were obviously manufacturing these products, which were all heading toward the growing gap. The noise level outside had to be fairly high, but inside their transport tube, Sisko heard barely little more than a low rumble. It's very impressive, Dax remarked. The raw materials are processed here and then converted into whatever is needed to construct the new hives. Here and in 1,000 other factory complexes, Torque explained. We will be coming closer to the work area. You may suffer some sensory discomfort, so please alert me if you do not feel well. The travel tube finally drew to a halt beside a small platform, and Torque opened the door. As he had warned them, they were immediately assaulted by everything the tube had sheltered them from. There was a rhythmic pounding, the sound of the workings of vast furnaces and engines in the complex they had passed. Transports whirled along the roadways, adding their quota to the noise. It was loud, but not unbearable, and a lot less than Sisko would have expected of such a complex and vast work site. There was an increased level of heat, and the smell of molten metals and burned earths from the foundries where the vast deck plates were being cast. Smoke and vapors curled about the buildings. And none of this really impressed Sisko at all. He was too taken in by staring at the gap ahead of them. They were probably a mile or so from the split in the hive, but the gap itself was by now almost that wide. It was pure black, without any sign of the stars beyond. On either edge of the gap were legions of machines at work. Huge spider-like welding machines prowled the edge of the area, sparks and flames flying as they worked on melding the new materials with the old. As they passed, other machines scurried in, carrying the braces, beams, and other supports. Smaller welders danced along, fixing the beams into position. There were workers, some in environmental suits, busily measuring, moving, and fixing materials. Trucks crawled in bearing machinery, some of which was apparently movable, and some of which was clearly in place. A vast army of workers and drones were frantically constructing the new material for the twin hives. It was industry and purpose on a scale that Sisko had never before seen. Whatever else the inhabitants of the hive might be, they were certainly engineers extraordinaire. Too bad they needed O'Brien back on the Defiant. He would have adored this.
It's very impressive, Odo grumbled. Magnificent, almost.
Thank you,
Torque replied. We are working at our fastest pace to create the two hives. It will be accomplished in a matter of days.
I can believe it, Dax said admiringly. The work pace is tremendous. I assume you have force shields in place along the edge of the gap?
Yes, to protect the workers.
Torque pointed. On the edge itself, only the drones are allowed to lay the plates and weld them. The area is checked for leaks, and then the edge of the field is pushed further out. Those cone-shaped devices you see beside the workers are the generators themselves. Would you like a closer look? If it would not interfere with the work, yes, agreed Cisco. It would be more than acceptable, Torque assured him. My friend Harl should be in the maintenance dome a short way ahead of us. He will be able to explain much more than I can. Please, follow me, and do not stray. It is for your own safety. While the drones are programmed to avoid living beings, I am not entirely certain that they would recognize you as such. Our body chemistries are surely different. Yes, Cisco said with a smile. I'm a trifle more thin-skinned than you, I suspect. They followed along behind Torque, who continually pointed out items of interest, from integration machines to the bioregenerators that would move in to begin planting and soil processing as soon as the metals had cooled. The outer skin was 3 layers thick, he explained, to guard against possible leaks into space, and reinforced with force generators to prevent meteorite impact. That's probably why the sensors couldn't get a good reading of the hive, Dax commented to Cisco. The layering effect would reinforce the screen shields and make readings difficult or impossible. It's all very impressive, Cisco agreed. These people have a tremendous technology. It's a shame their sense of morality isn't as well developed. Odo grunted. I'm not sure that I agree with you, Captain, he said. Cisco raised an eyebrow. You're the one who is putting the most pressure on him, Constable, he pointed out. Because I have a feeling he's going to crack, Odo explained. Torque is quite clearly uncomfortable with what his people have done. He knows what will happen to Bajor, and probably Cardassia Prime, too. This does not sit well on his conscience. Odo inclined his head slightly. I have a feeling that the pressure I'm applying may well pierce his sense of duty toward the hive. He could come around to our point of view. I'd be very happy if he did, Cisco commented. But will one hive master on our side be enough? The others all seem dead set on their course of action. If one can come around, then possibly more can be persuaded, Odo said. You're the one who insists on using diplomacy to fight this battle, after all. What other options do we have? None, agreed Cisco. Keep up the good work, Constable. I shall. They were now within several hundred yards of the gap. At this distance, the view of space beyond should have been stunning. Cisco was puzzled to note that the screens were opaque. It was as if a vast wall separated them from the gap and space. That was odd, because it was always simpler and more energy-efficient to make force screens invisible than to make them solid. Maybe it was to show the workers and drones exactly where the limit was. Or could there be another reason? A gnawing suspicion was starting to grow in his mind. He had assumed that the hive master's view of planetary dwellers being insane was simply prejudice. But what if it was more than that? He could hear the movement of the mechanisms behind the screens, but absolutely nothing of their work was visible. Still, there was plenty to see on this side of the barrier. Trucks were drawing in materials, and the growing area of open floor created by the drones was starting to fill in with the walls of buildings or the outlines of where parks and even rivers would be. All the workers and machines were evidently following some sort of master plan worked out more than 2,000 generations before. It was astounding. Torque had his small computer out again and tapped into it. Odd, he muttered. Odo turned abruptly. What is? He seemed to be sensing trouble. I'm getting a reading from Harl's comp, Torque explained. It is several units away from here, and he does not reply to my call. Maybe he's resting, suggested Cisco. At this time of day? Unlikely. Torque's snout wrinkled in confusion. Besides, his work area is that maintenance dome ahead of us. He gestured at the 30-foot crimson half-globe. Why would he be over in the factory units? Perhaps we should find him and ask, Odo suggested. That is... The noise of the work was suddenly overwhelmed by the sound of an explosion. Cisco whirled automatically to take in the situation. About half a mile away, one of the drones carrying welding gear was enveloped in an expanding ball of fire. Then the welding gases caught fire, and there was a loud crump, and then a flattened shock wave that slammed through the air. Heat, smoke, stench, and screams all slammed into them at the same instant. The sound of the blast rang in Cisco's ears as he was hurled back into the closet wall. Around him, slivers of metal and crystal flew. He felt his skin slashed in several places, and then a terrific blow in his back as he slammed into the wall. Dazed, he tried to stay on his feet. There was the sound of a second explosion, and then a third. The shock waves flew through the deck plates, hurling Cisco and his companions aside. Flames and gases licked out from the machinery, enveloping the area as they expanded. The sound of shattering machinery and screams seemed to come from everywhere. And then the force wall ahead of them died, showing the vacuum of space beyond, and all hell broke loose. Chapter 16. Shaking his head to try and clear the ringing in his ears, Cisco managed to stagger back to his feet. He ran the back of his right hand across his forehead, and it came away sticky with blood. Not too much, though, so he tried to ignore it. His shoulders ached from the blow the wall had dealt him, and he felt slightly disoriented. Otherwise, he was in acceptable condition. "Dax," he called. "Odo!" And as an afterthought, "Torque!" "I'm here, Benjamin," Dax replied. She was beside the same wall he had hit, but about 20 feet away. She was cut and bleeding in several places, and there was a red stain on her left leg. Despite this, she was struggling to her feet. Cisco hurried across to help her. "Rest here," he suggested, but she shrugged off the suggestion impatiently. "I'll rest later." She glanced around the wreckage. "Have you found Odo or Torque yet?" "I'm here," came Odo's voice. The shapeshifter abruptly grew into being from a puddle of liquid close by. "I'm sorry about revealing myself, Captain, but I automatically liquefied when I hit the wall." He was undamaged, naturally. It took a lot to injure the changeling. "That's okay, Constable," Cisco answered. "This is something of an emergency, obviously. Can you see Torque?" It was still blazing, and an alarm was whooping in the distance. Strangely, all the screams had ceased. Cisco could see the stars through the collapsing barrier. There was no sign of any repair crew or mechs heading to check out the gap. "Okay, more important," he snapped. "The force field's dropping. Dax?" Whipping out her tricorder, Dax scanned the area. "It's down to 5% and failing, Benjamin. We've got to do something fast." She winced as she started to move. Could you give me a hand? I don't think I can make it alone." Cisco gripped her around the shoulders and allowed her to lean on him. "My pleasure." He glanced back at Odo. "See if you can find Torque or any other survivors." "Acknowledged." Concentrating on helping Dax limp over to the crackling force generator, Cisco could spare little attention for what was going on around him. There had been some kind of malfunction, obviously. One, no more, of the transports had exploded. But why weren't there rescue crews swarming all over the area? The hive dwellers were so efficient at everything. What had gone so badly awry now? Well, he could worry about that later. Right now, the important thing was to prevent the generator from failing. If it went, then the atmosphere inside the hive would be sucked out into space. There was no way of knowing how many this would kill, but the 3 of them would certainly be included. Cisco moved to tap his communicator to contact the Defiant, but it was missing. It must have fallen off when he'd been hit by the blast. They reached the conical generator, and Cisco eased Dax against it. "Think you can figure it out, old man?" he asked. "I can figure anything out," she replied, smiling through her obvious pain. "In time. Better hope I've got long enough." She started to use her tricorder to scan the machine, the first step in understanding it. "I'll be fine if you want to help Odo," she added pointedly. Cisco glanced at her and saw her communicator was gone also. She was lucky to have retained the tricorder, really. That left Odo. He nodded. "I'll be back soon." "I'll be here," she promised, "if I can get this working again." She started to remove one of the panels. "Go." He ran back the way they had come. Thick smoke was starting to descend on the entire area from all the fires. No doubt chemicals ignited by the blast caused these. The once level roadway was buckled and shattered in several places, and there were now large chunks of metal protruding up from the floor, thrown there by the violence of the explosion. Cisco, Odo, and Dax had been very fortunate. But what about the workers who had been here? Where were they? "Captain," he heard Odo call, "I found Torque, I think." That didn't sound good. Cisco ran to join the constable, preparing himself to see a shattered and perhaps unidentifiable body. Instead, he saw... What the blazes? "I believe it's Torque," Odo offered, rising from where he was crouched. At his feet was a circular object about 3.5 feet across. As he stared at it, Cisco realized what it was. "He's rolled up in a ball," he exclaimed. All that was now visible of him were the plates from his shell, overlapped in a circle. "A protective measure, no doubt," Odo growled. "Probably instinctive, in fact. All of them must have curled up when the explosion went off. It probably saved their lives." Cisco nodded and bent over what was presumably Torque. He rapped on the shell. "It's safe to come out now," he called. "I've tried that," Odo remarked. "Nothing's getting through to him. He'll have to come out of this on his own." "I doubt he can hear anything in that state," agreed Cisco. "And he may even take my tapping his shell for further trouble." He glanced around. "I guess he'll be safe enough here. There's no immediate danger from the fire. Let's see if we can find further survivors. Some may be in trouble." As he was about to hurry off, he remembered something. "Do you still have your communicator?" "Of course," Odo replied. "Contact the Defiant and get Kira to offer help to Dron. But tell her that on no account is she to beam anyone else over without permission. They'll have to use you to zero in on us. Both Dax and I have lost our badges." "Understood." Odo tapped his communicator as he hurried off. Cisco ignored that aspect of things. Strangely, there was still no sign of rescue equipment or crews arriving, though there had been plenty of time. What was going on here? He was starting to get what seemed like a crazy answer to that question forming in his mind. He started to scan the streets and wreckage for further signs of the curled-up balls that were the hive-dwellers. Now he knew what to look for. He could see several of them. Most were out of immediate danger, but some he had to grab and roll away from trouble and licking flames. Their shells were obviously tough, but he doubted that they could stand being baked. After about 10 minutes, he had cleared as many as he could see. The wreckage of several trucks still blazed, and the smoke was getting worse. He found 2 of the aliens quite obviously dead. One had been caught in the blast, and his or her body was charred and shattered beyond hope. The second one had a length of steel rod impaled and extruding 1.5 feet from its back. Thankfully, there were no further casualties that he could detect. He'd need a tricorder to discover any others, and Dax had the only one. He loped back through the throat-burning smog to where he had left her. Parts of the generator were scattered about, and she had her tricorder plugged deep within the generator's heart. Her left leg was extended stiffly behind her, and the trouser leg was even more soaked with blood. Deciding not to mention this, he asked gently, "How's it going?" "This is it," she replied. "The field is going to fail any second, unless my patchwork is right." Her head emerged from the machine, grimy and cut. She managed a wan smile. "Here goes." She tapped in the command signal on the main panel, and the generator failed. There was a shriek of air as it was sucked through the void in the field. Wind tore at them both and started to drag off loose pieces of metal. "I guess I got it wrong," Dax yelled over the din. She started tapping out further commands on the machine. "You can't win them all," Cisco answered, holding on to the generator for support. The howling wind plucked at his clothing, trying to draw him up into the gaping maw above them. All around, small objects were clattering down the streets toward the empty space and stars beyond. "Better luck next time." "I better win this," she replied, "or there won't be any next time." Her fingers flew as fast as she could manage as she scanned the readouts. "Damn, that's what happened. I misdiagnosed the couplings." Given her medical condition, Cisco was hardly surprised, but he knew she wouldn't forgive herself. She managed to enter her new figures. And the wall was back in place where it should be. The wind died away, and all the debris fell back onto the ground with clashing and clatterings. Cisco smiled at her. "Well done, old man." "Thank you, Benjamin." Pale and weak, she slid down the side of the machine. Cisco caught her and lowered her the rest of the way to the ground. "How do you feel?" he asked, concerned. The patch on her leg was wet with fresh blood. "Marvelous," she said, and shook her head. "I have felt better." Cisco glanced up and around. "Odo!" he yelled. "Get over here now!" "Coming, Captain." A moment later, Odo sprinted out of one of the buildings, looking as fresh as he always did. He saw Dax lying on the ground and understood immediately. As he ran, he slapped his communicator. "Odo to Defiant. Lock in on my signal. 2 to beam up immediately to sickbay." Cisco jumped aside to allow Odo to scoop up Dax into his arms. Then the transporter beam took hold, and in a sparkle of lights, both of them disappeared. Cisco stood watching the empty spot for a moment, and then he became aware of movement. He looked around and saw several of the hive aliens hurrying along the roads. They were all pushing what looked like floating stretchers. "About time," he grumbled. "Where have you been?" One of them glared at him. "We could not come in until the barrier was repaired," he snapped. "We came as fast as we could." "Then why didn't anyone come to repair the barrier?" Cisco queried. "You were very lucky my friend could accomplish the task." "The repair crew was on its way," the alien answered. "They could not reach here fast enough." "Only one repair crew for the generator?" Cisco couldn't believe it. "Surely there are more." The alien gestured at the barrier. "Considering what lies beyond that?" he asked, shocked. "We are fortunate to have even one crew." Cisco frowned. "But all that lies beyond the barrier is space." "Exactly." The medic hurried on to help with the injured. Cisco watched them at work, gathering up the fallen. All of the hive dwellers who had been here during the accident were still curled up in balls, and had to simply be lifted onto stretchers to be moved. His suspicions were starting to clarify into certainty now. They were afraid of space. 2 hours later, Cisco stood once again in the Hive Master's assembly room. Much of the confusion seemed to have settled down by now, but there was still plenty of action going on. Cisco had quietly gravitated to the rear of the room while Dron took initial charge of the tidying-up operations, and then handed the task over to Industry Master Boran, with clear instructions to get the work back on target once again. Cisco was piecing the information he'd been gathering together in his head and trying to work out exactly what was going on, and how he could use whatever information he got out of this visit to the best advantage. He was still musing over possibilities when Odo returned. "Dax will be fine," the constable reported, handing Cisco a new communications badge. "She lost a lot of blood through her leg wound, but Dr. Bashir says we got her back in plenty of time. She'll just have to take it easy for a while." "Which I doubt Dax will agree to," Cisco replied, clipping on his badge. He felt dressed again now. "Anything else?" "Nothing that won't wait a while." Odo stared around the room. "Has anything significant happened here?" "It's hard to say. I'm not in the loop, so to speak." Cisco nodded at the small clutch of hive masters at the end of the room. "Dron and his senior associates are conferring about getting their construction back online." And how is Torque?
Cisco shrugged. No sign of him yet, but I think we'd have heard if he were injured. There is one significant thing, though. He blinked. Action at last. The group had broken up, and Dron proceeded across the room to join Cisco and Odo. "We owe you both our thanks," Dron announced, obviously for everyone in the room to hear. "Without your aid, the disaster might have been much worse. If there is any way we can repay you—" "There is," Cisco replied without expecting much. "Call off the move on Bajor." "That, I am afraid, is impossible, Captain." Dron spread his hands. "Surely you realize that all our resources are being used up in forming the two hives. They must be replenished, and Bajor is the closest suitable world. We have no option but to absorb it. I wish that it were otherwise, but it is so." "I see," Cisco frowned. "I had hoped that our display of good intentions would influence your decision." "Your help is very much appreciated, Captain, believe me," Dron informed him. "But we cannot change what must be." At that moment the door irised open, and Torque hurried in. He appeared tired, drained, and still shaken, but there was a grim resolve in his eyes. "Captain," he called loudly. "Captain, I cannot possibly thank you enough for what you did." He hurried across and held out his hand, and then stopped in confusion. "My apologies. I was about to greet you as one of the hive, and for a moment I forgot that you were not one of us." "I'll bet," muttered Odo. "You have, of course, no shell to stroke," Torque added. He looked about the room at his fellow hive-masters. "But in all other aspects you have proven yourselves beings with honor and great courage. I salute you as an equal." There was a murmur of comment at this. Some of the masters clearly didn't like the sound of that. The old hive-master Hosir stepped forward from the bunch. "An emotion I second," he said. "Captain Cisco, Odo, and the unfortunately absent Lieutenant Dax have all acted well. They are clearly rational and compassionate beings." Dron looked more than a little put out by this, and Cisco could understand why. He had been publicly endorsed by two hive-masters, and Dron would look foolish if he refused to listen to Cisco's arguments now. Apparently at least two of the aliens were on his side. "As I said," Dron said, catching the spirit smoothly, "we owe you our thanks. You are welcome here at any time you wish. Now, on to important matters." He turned and beckoned Raldar to him. "Security Master Raldar, you have something to report, I believe." "Indeed," agreed Raldar, bowing his head slightly. "My men have been investigating the explosions of the 3 drones that began this state of emergency. They have discovered that the drones did not explode accidentally." "Really?" growled Odo. "You're saying that someone sabotaged them?" Raldar scowled back at him, obviously irritated that an outsider should be commenting. "Yes, I am. And I believe we have uncovered the culprit." He gestured to one of the guards at the door, who then ushered in a young hive-dweller. "This is the worker Tuk," he explained. "He was stationed close to the explosion site. He has relevant information the masters should hear." "Proceed," Dron decided. "Give your evidence." "As you command." Tuk gave a low bow, not easy considering his shell. "One of my co-workers has been speaking treason in my hearing," he told the assembled masters. "He spoke of creating trouble to bring dissent into the hive, and to attack the authority of the hive-masters themselves. He works in the repair bays, and he recently completed work on the 3 drones that blew up." There was a murmur of outrage from the council. "Who would dare do such an evil act?" demanded Preman. "What is the name of this deviant individual?" "His name is Harl," announced Tuk. Chapter 17. "No!" exclaimed Torque,
shaken and clearly disturbed. "I know Harl. He would never do such a thing." Dron scowled, wrinkling his snout. "You claim that worker Took is lying?" he asked. "For what reason?" "I do not know his motives," Tork answered, sounding more confident now. "But I do know Harl." Raldar snorted. "And you claim he never spoke treason?" This point told on Tork, who reeled as if struck. "He spoke a lot of things," he admitted slowly. "It is true that he has little love for the Hive Masters, but he loves the Hive itself. He would never do anything to endanger us all." Raldar shook his head. "4 people lost their lives in this act of sabotage," he growled. "Machines and valuable resources were destroyed. Harl has been accused and must answer the accusation." Odo stepped forward. "On what grounds?" he asked skeptically. Raldar glared at him. "Who gave you the authority to interfere in this?" he demanded. "I am the Chief of Security on Deep Space 9, Odo answered. "It is my task to uncover guilt and innocence. I would hardly do more than question a man on mere hearsay." He gestured at Took. "Can anyone vouch for the truth of what this person says? Are there others who heard these threats of violence? Or is it simply his word against Harl's?" "Well said," Tork approved. "Never has unsupported accusations been the base of a charge. Is there no more proof against Harl than this?" "We have the culprit himself," Raldar announced, clearly annoyed by what was happening. He gestured to the guards. "Bring him in." Tork gasped as his friend was escorted in by 2 guards. Harl's hands were manacled together. "Why is he being treated like this?" he demanded. "He is only accused, and not convicted. He should not be restrained." Harl snorted. "It is too late for logic, friend," he said. "I have already been tried and convicted of this deed without proof and without being allowed to speak." Dron held up his hand. "You are being allowed to speak now," he said dryly. "I see you are already availing yourself of the right. Now, answer truthfully. Did you commit this sabotage?" "No," Harl said loudly and strongly. "I did not. He asked me to," he added, pointing to Took, "but I refused. He obviously went ahead and performed the deed himself and blamed me for it." "A counter-accusation," Raldar sneered. "It is only to be expected." "There is also his comp," added Took. "I discovered it near the site of the explosion. It has only his handprints on it, and it was the one used to detonate the explosives." Odo could stomach no more. Though he was only a guest on the Hive, his passion for justice would not allow him to remain silent any further. "Really?" he asked sarcastically. "Am I to understand that this young revolutionary here apparently used his own computer to trigger the bombs?" He turned to Harl. "That was terribly foolish of you, wasn't it? To use something that could be traced directly back to you so simply? You're either a very poor rebel, or you," he gestured at Took, "are a very poor liar." "You have no right," Raldar began, but Hosea raised his own voice. "He has every right. He was there and endangered by the blasts. Besides, he makes sense. I wish to hear him out." "So do I," added Tork. "Please continue." In his element now, Odo did so. He glared at Took so ferociously the alien took a step backward. "You found Harl's comp at the site of the explosion, did you?" "Yes," Took answered defiantly. "Really?" Odo turned to Tork. "Do you have your comp with you?" "Of course." Tork pulled it from the niche in his shell. "Why?" "Just prior to the explosion," Odo reminded him, "you tried to contact Harl, didn't you? Where did your comp say that his comp was?" Tork's face lit up as he realized what Odo was getting at. "To the west of the site," he answered. "Well out of range of the explosion." Odo spun around. "And you found it at the site?" he growled. "I wonder how it got there." Took appeared shaken and confused. "You would say that he is innocent," he said to Tork. "He is your friend, and probably your accomplice." "Ah," Odo crowed. "More accusations to cover a slip in your story, eh? That's not good enough. And another thing, you said that only Harl's prints are on the comp?" "Yes," Took answered defiantly. "How do you know that?" asked Odo. "You could not have tested for prints, could you? Besides, wouldn't yours be on it too, if you found it as you claim?" Took was clearly shaken now. "I suppose they would be, yes." "Convenient." Odo surveyed the masters. "And perhaps they were there before the explosion, too. So we have two sets of prints on the weapon, Harl's and yours. And you were the one discovered with the device, and which you claim you were turning in as evidence of Harl's guilt. Evidence you have no way of checking, surely." Raldar stepped forward. "You are simply confusing the issue," he snapped, "and you are harassing the witness." "Witness?" asked Odo. "I'd say suspect would be a better word for it, wouldn't you?" He whirled to face Dran. "I think there is at least as much evidence implicating Took in this matter as there is against Harl. Wouldn't you agree?" Dran clearly didn't want to make a decision about that. "Well," he hedged, "it does appear confusing." "Confusing?" Everyone's eyes turned to Hosir, who was seated at the main comp in the room. "If you want to know what is really puzzling, I have just checked the determination records, and I confess myself bemused." What?" asked Makarn, stammering slightly. "I do not see the, relevance of the determination records." "You do not see a great deal. That is your problem," Hosir informed him cruelly. "I just looked up Witness Took there. It seems from his determination that he is not a worker at all." He feigned surprise. "It says that he was assigned to security." He blinked mildly and then stared at Raldar. "That means he works for you. Odd that you did not know this." "I was reassigned," stammered Took, but the damage had been done. The other masters in the room stared alternately at him and at Raldar. "Really?" asked Hosir. "And who changed your determination for you? Only a hive master could do that." He stared at his fellows one at a time. "Anyone wish to confess to having changed Took's status for him?" There was dead silence. "I thought not." Happily, Tork said, "I move that this matter be investigated more thoroughly, and that Took be taken to restraining cells for the time being, and that Harl be set free. And," he finished, glaring at Raldar, "that Security Master Raldar give a full and sufficient explanation for this to the assembled masters." There was a surge of agreement with his motions, which Dran cut short. "What you say," he commented smoothly, "is clearly only reasonable and just." He gestured to the guards, who struck the manacles from Harl and transferred them to the protesting Took. "Take him away. And you, Raldar, had better go as well. I shall want a full accounting of this from you at our next meeting." Raldar was scowling deeply and glaring at Tork, Odo, and Hosir in turn. Finally he nodded. "I obey," he growled in low tones, and then stalked from the room. Dran turned to survey Tork and then Odo. "It appears that this matter is more complicated than it first appeared," he said slowly. "I thank you for your help. I suspect it will take some time for the truth to emerge." "I'm sure it will,"
Odo agreed cynically. That's often the case in such matters. Torque turned to Odo and Sisko with a smile. Once again I am in your debt, he said. You have saved the reputation and life of a friend. It seems to be becoming a habit, Sisko replied. If there is anything that I can do in return, Torque said simply, please name it. There is one thing, Sisko answered. You have kindly shown us some of the hive and answered many of our questions. I feel that I am beginning to understand your people. Now, perhaps, you will let me return the favor, so that you may start to understand mine. Torque's snout wrinkled. I do not understand you. Accompany me back to Bajor, Sisko asked. See how they live. Try and understand why they will not leave their homes. There was a collective gasp at this suggestion, and Torque was clearly shaken by the suggestion. I'm sorry, Sisko said, feigning puzzlement. Have I offended in some way? He already had a good idea what the answer would be. Drawn moved forward. What you ask is absolutely impossible, he explained. Surely you must realize this. I'm sorry, Sisko replied, determined to make him spell it out. But I don't. Why is it impossible? When Drawn didn't seem inclined to reply, Makhorn stepped forward. It is because we are too well adapted to our lives here inside the hive. Everything that is, outside is non-essential and counter to our well-being. His earlier insight, Sisko realized, had been correct. He had guessed the reason for the non-transparent barrier, the lack of help, the reaction of the non-injured hive members to no apparent threat. You can't stand space, he murmured. You can't be outside, or look outside. Odo frowned. You mean this entire species is agoraphobic? He demanded. Yes, Sisko said. They are. That's why they view planet-dwellers as insane. They can't cope with the concept themselves and declare the idea madness instead of their response. That is not true, Drawn blustered. Our approach is rational. There is nothing wrong with any of us. Then prove it, Sisko said. Open a window into space. Look on the stars. Drawn couldn't disguise his shudder of revulsion. That's disgusting. That's what I thought. Sisko glared around the room. It isn't the planet-dwellers who are insane, he said gently. Has it occurred to you that you're the ones not facing up to reality? You can't say things like that about us, Pakat yelled. We are not deviant in any way. Our way is the only true evolved way to live. Odo sneered. Really? How evolved, how true a life can you have hiding behind walls built from flimsy logic and half-truths? None of you has the courage to face the facts. I do. Torque swallowed and sighed. I will go with you to see Bajor. What? Pakat stared at his colleague in revulsion. You will allow yourself to be deluded by these aliens? No, Torque answered gently. This is my decision. The captain is correct. How can we understand the Bajorans if we are not willing to experience what they experience? Hosir laid a kindly hand on Torque's shell. But you are badly affected by the sight of the stars, he said. We all know that. You tried the experience once already, and failed. Then I will try again, Torque replied. He was obviously unhappy, but determined. I cannot stand by and do nothing. Captain Sisko and his friends have proven their good intentions. Can we do any less? Sisko cleared his throat. It's a brave decision, he said with genuine sympathy. But is it a wise one? If you retreat into your shell again when you reach Bajor, then you will learn nothing. I may have underestimated how difficult it is for all of your people. Perhaps this is not a wise idea." Hosea smiled slightly and gave Torque a significant look. "It is not so for all of our people, Captain," he replied without turning. "A small percentage of us can stare into space without ill effect. They are our astronomers." Clearly his words meant something very significant to Torque. The alien's face lit up with delight and hope. "Yes," he breathed. He turned to Dron. "Grand Master, I formally request your permission to accompany the captain back to the world of Bajor, to study it and report back to the Hive Masters in assembly." Dron had obviously been trying to understand what had been happening, and to turn it to his best advantage. He scowled at the request, but clearly needed to reply. "Are you sure that this is wise?" he asked, playing for time. "It may affect you very adversely." "I know the risks," Torque answered with confidence. "I am willing to undertake them." Dron glanced around the room, taking in the feelings of his fellow council members. "Then I have little option but to grant your request," he decided. "You will accompany the aliens and report back to us as soon as possible. If you are able," he added significantly. "Thank you," Torque said. "I shall endeavor to serve the Hive to the best of my limited abilities." His snout twitched. "There is one further matter. The possibility is that I may indeed become incapacitated by shock. Therefore I request a companion to aid me, who will not be so affected." "Do you have anyone in mind?" asked Hosea before Dron could say anything. "Yes," Torque said. "An astronomer named Sana. I know she is unaffected by agoraphobia." Makarn looked shocked. "But she has only just passed her determination," he objected. "She, has been assigned to Team 2 as an astronomer. The determination cannot be wrong." "But it could, of course, be changed at the request of a Hive Master, for personal reasons," Dron said slyly. Sisko wasn't following this exchange, but there was obviously some kind of power play going on here. Dron and Torque were clearly battling over something. "This is not a personal request," Torque answered smoothly. "Such a request for change of determination for selfish reasons would go against everything our society holds dear. As Makarn said, the determination is infallible, but it is not omniscient." He smiled at Hosea. "What is that supposed to mean?" demanded Makarn, frowning. "Simply that the determination is made on the best possible data available," Torque replied, "at the time of determination." He looked around the room. "But the task of assistant to an ambassador to Bajor was not available at the time that Sana took her determination, so she could not have been appointed to the post. I believe that Sana is the person best suited to the task, and am willing to have her undergo a second determination in order to prove it." There was another round of shocked muttering in the room. "There has never been a second determination," Primon protested. "It is without precedent." "So is this situation," argued Hosea. "I, for one, move that we simply accept our colleague's recommendation. He is bravely risking his life and sanity to try and help in a difficult situation, one that none of us would volunteer to undertake," he added significantly. "His choice of assistant seems wise to me." Dron didn't appear to be happy with the direction in which the discussion was going, but he was obviously not intending to lose control. "We do seem to be moving quickly in new directions," he commented. "But as matters are very pressing, I for one will agree to forego a second determination for this Sana. Unless anyone has any serious objections, therefore, I am inclined to agree with our young colleague's request. Is there any dissent?" Though Makon looked as if he might challenge the ruling, he subsided under one of Dron's withering glares. There was no other comment. "Then it is agreed," Dron commented. He turned to face Sisko. "You will accept full responsibility for the safety of our observers?" he demanded. "I will," Sisko agreed. "I promise you all that I shall do everything in my power to keep both Torque and Sana safe." "So be it." Dron turned to the Hive Masters. "I believe that is quite sufficient for one meeting. We all have our duties to attend to." They all got the point of that message and began filing out of the room, in clumps of 2 or 3, all talking in low tones. After a moment, only Hosir, Torque, and Dron were left with Sisko and Odo. Hosir clapped Torque cheerily on the shell. "I admire your courage, youngster," he commented. "Before you leave, stop by and see me. And when you return, I look forward to hearing what you have to say." He inclined his head at Dron, and then turned to Sisko. "Captain, it has been very interesting. I hope that we shall meet again under less tense circumstances." Sisko liked the old alien. He was craftier than he seemed, and was clearly playing some political games of his own. "Likewise," he commented. Hosir nodded and then left the room. Torque bowed to Dron. "Thank you for your wise decisions, Grand Master," he murmured. "I will endeavor to fulfill the trust you have placed in me." Dron nodded. "Remember always that we serve the greater good of the Hive," he said. "Do not be swayed by emotion or appearances. Judge wisely and return in safety." Torque nodded, and then led Sisko and Odo outside. "I must inform Sana of the Hive Master's decision," he said. "We should be ready to go with you in less than 1 of your hours, if that is acceptable." "That's fine, Torque," Sisko answered. "I'd better get back to my ship. Constable, would you be kind enough to wait here and then escort our guests to the Defiant?" "Of course." Sisko slapped his communicator. "Sisko to Defiant. 1 to beam back." In the council chamber, Dron crossed to the other door and irised it open. Raldar stepped in, looking duly chagrined. "I would hardly call that a clever scheme," Dron snapped. "Not only did you not succeed in placing the blame on Harl, but you even managed to implicate yourself in the business. What do you have to say for yourself?" "It was the fault of that alien, Odo," complained Raldar. "If he had not interfered—" "Then Hosir or one of the others would have," exclaimed Dron. "At least take the blame for your mistakes honestly. Harl is cleared, and you yourself are seen in a poor light." He considered for a moment. "It might be better if that idiot Took were not around to create further problems." Raldar nodded. "I fear that he might just take his own life out of guilt and remorse for what he has done." "That sounds more than plausible," agreed Dron. The Hive Master slumped onto a seat. "Perhaps we can then allow the matter to fade in memory, especially with the formation of the second hive. There are more important matters to consider than one foolish worker with a grudge." He started tapping out commands on his comp. "The division will go according to plan. The Masters will be split between the 2 hives. You will remain with me on Hive 1. Pakat will be Grand Master of Hive 2. "That was to have been my hive," exclaimed Raldar angrily. "You had agreed." "That was before this fiasco," Dron snapped. "You have shown yourself lacking in good judgment. If you redeem yourself, and I say again, if, then you will become my successor. Otherwise, you will become nothing. Do you understand me?" Fighting to control his anger and disappointment, Raldar managed a curt nod. "Good." "And what of Torque?" asked Raldar, more subdued. "He has escaped both traps you laid for him." "You have been listening at doors again, I see." Dron's snout wrinkled in irritation. True, Torque has proven to be more flexible than I had expected. Obviously, Hosier favors the youth. Raldar sneered. Out of anger over losing the Grand Master post to you, he suggested. He never desired it, Dron snorted. Hosier is bright and cunning, but he lacks ambition and drive. Until recently, he has never gone against me in any decision. I think his shell has finally started to firm up. Hosier sees Torque as his protégé, and wishes to groom him to be everything that he never had the nerve to become. There was a thoughtful look on Dron's face. Even if I do wish you to be my successor, you may face a challenge from Torque. He is barely more than a child, protested Raldar. But an intelligent one, thundered Dron. And unless you show yourself to be cleverer than you have today, he will become the next Grand Master. You have to apply yourself. Raldar bowed again. As you say, he agreed, trying to sound submissive. May I ask why you allowed him to accompany the aliens? Surely you cannot be thinking of allowing him to change your objectives. Do not even think such thoughts, Dron snarled. The great design will go forward, even if we have to wipe out a dozen worlds. No, he continued in a more calm vein. I allowed Torque to go for one simple reason. When the aliens cannot dissuade us from our course, they will obviously hold Torque hostage to try and force us to change our plans. They will threaten to kill him if we proceed. We will never allow such perfidious behavior to affect our destiny, and we will refuse. They will kill him. When they do that, Torque will become a martyr to our people, and he will cease to be a problem to you and me. Better a dead martyr than a live problem. Raldar nodded. You have thought it all out clearly, he said in admiration. The great design will succeed. Of course. Dron stood up. Now I must rest. This has all been fatiguing. See to Took and wait for my call. The time for action has come. Chapter 18. It felt good to be back on the Defiant. The hive had been fascinating and even more than a trifle enviable. If only DS9 had some of the facilities that were available on that ship. Sisko smiled ruefully. Sometimes the Spartan nature of Deep Space Nine made him wish that he were assigned to either a starship or a starbase. Then came a challenge such as this, and he knew he was where he was meant to be. Still, he had several calls to make, none of which were likely to be pleasant. When he reached his ready room, the first one he placed was to Admiral Noguchi. The old man managed a thin smile. I hope you have good news to report, Captain. I wish I had, sir, Sisko replied. The Hive Masters are still intent on making Bajor their next target, and nothing I've managed to do so far has convinced them to change their minds. However, one of the Masters, Torque, is accompanying me back to Bajor to study the situation for himself. I believe he is sympathetic, and I hope that I can win him over to our side. Noguchi nodded. But will one lone voice for us affect them? Frankly, I'm not sure, Sisko admitted, but there's very little hope otherwise. I understand, Captain. Noguchi drew himself up straight. Then Starfleet's orders are clear. If you cannot persuade the Hive to change its plans, you must do all within your power to stop them. We cannot allow these intruders to devastate another planet, particularly not Bajor. Is that clear, Captain? Perfectly. Even though he had been expecting the command, it still disturbed Sisko. They are not a bad people, Admiral. I hope we can negotiate a peaceful settlement. So do I, Captain, Noguchi said fervently. Starfleet wants nothing more than peace. But we cannot allow a planet-wrecking society to remain at large in this galaxy. He glanced at his pad. Relief will not be with you any faster, he apologized. This one is on your shoulders, Benjamin. I'm sorry. So am I, Admiral, Sisko admitted. But it's part of my job. He signed off, feeling weary. That communication had been bad enough, but he was dreading the next one. A few moments later, Gul Dukat's supercilious smile greeted him. Captain, allow me to congratulate you on your recent promotion. It couldn't have happened to a better human. Thank you, Dukat, Sisko answered. But this is not a social call. I assume you have been briefed on the situation in the Durain system by your ship that's sitting here watching. Dukat inclined his head slightly. You mean the tragic destruction of Durain 4 and the appalling loss of life with it? Sadly, yes. He spread his hands. I wish I could help, but complications have arisen, and there is little we can do but offer condolences. You'd better save them for your own people, Sisko told him, and was slightly pleased to see the smug expression wiped off the Cardassian's face. What do you mean, Captain? Sisko hedged for a moment. Do you know what is happening to the hive at this moment? Dukat glanced away for a few seconds and then back. It appears to be suffering some kind of splitting process, he replied. My observers think it may be fissioning into two separate craft. Your observers are quite correct, Sisko confirmed. In 2 days there will be 2 identical hives, each with the capacity and appetite of the first hive. That is unfortunate, Dukat answered. Then the point sank home, and he scowled into the screen. Appetite? You mean that the 2 hives will be seeking further worlds to plunder? Precisely. One of the hives is targeting Bajor. Dukat clucked his tongue. That's a shame. I assume that the Federation will be protecting their ally. We will be doing everything that we can, Sisko extemporized. What should interest you more is that the second hive will be heading for Cardassia Prime. That completely wiped the last vestiges of his smugness away. What? If it was possible for a Cardassian to look paler, Dukat managed that astounding feat. Cardassia Prime? Your hearing is excellent. Sisko leaned forward. I wish we could offer you assistance, but under the circumstances. He spread his arms. Given their level of technology, Dukat, I'd strongly advise you to try and talk to these people to avoid a war. Thank you for your concern, Captain, Dukat managed to say, looking very pained. But we know best how to look after our own interests. Thank you for this information. Now, I believe I had better discuss this matter with my colleagues. The screen went blank. At least I managed to shake him up a bit, Sisko thought. But the Cardassians were in a much better position to meet this threat head-on than Bajor was. Cardassia had 3 fleets stationed within 2 days of the homeworld at all times. Maybe they would stand a chance if it came down to a war with the Hive. Bajor had no such forces. The only things that stood between it and the Hive were the Defiant and Deep Space Nine, and there wasn't a great deal of firepower concentrated between the 2 of them. He could put off his next call no longer. A moment later he was looking into the troubled eyes of Shakar. The First Minister grimaced slightly. It's too much to hope for good news, I imagine, he said. I'm afraid so, agreed Sisko. The Hive Masters remain firm in their intentions. However, I will be bringing one of their number with me back to DS9 and then on to Bajor. He is willing to listen to whatever you have to say. I think he is sympathetic to our point of view, and we may be able to win him over. End of Side 4.